Chapter 966. Boom! From the top of Chu Fengmian's head, countless blades suddenly condensed into a blade that was 1,000 feet long. It condensed silently and slashed down at Chu Fengmian. Many of the martial artists present were unable to react to the formation of the blade. By the time they realized it, the blade was already falling toward Chu Fengmian. It was so fast that it caught everyone off guard. Even Chu Fengmian seemed to be standing on the spot, unable to react. What a fast blade! The seventh prince was purposely showing weakness. Look, the seventh prince's strength is completely different from before. He's actually in the Fate realm. Has he been hiding his cultivation all this time? I didn't expect the seventh prince to be an emperor. He deliberately hid his strength during the test. Chu Fengmian is in trouble now. Do you think he can withstand it? Not good. Even an emperor wouldn't be able to withstand such a sudden attack. Chu Fengmian's aptitude is terrifying, but he's still not an emperor. There's still a gap. The seventh prince's concealment is terrifying. We can't see through his cultivation. I feel like Chu Fengmian is going to be defeated by the seventh prince. The martial artists on the spectators' stand were talking to each other. They had just realized that the seventh prince had been hiding his strength all this time. It was so well hidden that they had never heard of it. The seventh prince's cultivation had actually reached the Fate realm. Your Empire of Destiny really hid your strength well. On the spectators' stand, several elders looked at a white-haired elder. This white-haired elder was one of the patriarchs of the Yen dynasty. All's fair in war. The ancestor of the Empire of Destiny sneered. The seventh prince had been hiding his cultivation all this time. He was waiting for the best opportunity to show his true strength and catch his opponent off guard. Even an emperor or some of the most famous geniuses in the 9 regions could be killed by such a sudden attack. Chu Fengmian, I didn't plan to reveal my strength so early, but it's worth it to kill you in the first round. All the opportunities you have will belong to me. Die in peace. The seventh prince looked at Chu Fengmian and said ferociously. He had heard of Chu Fengmian's countless encounters. As long as he killed Chu Fengmian, all the encounters would fall into his hands. As the seventh prince shouted, the power of the blade was condensed to the extreme and fell into Chu Fengmian's body. You think I don't know that you're hiding your cultivation? The corner of Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a mocking smile. The seventh prince might be able to hide it from others, but how could he hide it from Chu Fengmian? Chu Fengmian had long seen through his act of weakness. Under everyone's gaze, the seventh prince, Chu Fengmian, the emperors, and slowly, the emperor. What? What does Chu Fengmian want? Is he out of his mind? Is he crazy? Is he trying to grab the blade with his bare hand? Is this guy scared silly? Seeing Chu Fengmian's actions, many rulers were shocked, and their faces were filled with surprise. Any emperor would have to use all their strength to block the seventh prince's blade. They wouldn't dare to hold back. But now, Chu Fengmian was trying to grab it with his bare hand? He was simply courting death. Courting death? The seventh prince saw Chu Fengmian's action and his face became even more ferocious. Die! The power of the blade rose steadily and the sharp blade slashed at the seventh prince's right hand. But the moment the blade touched Chu Fengmian's skin, it stopped moving. The blade slashed at Chu Fengmian's palm, but there wasn't a single trace of blood. It couldn't even cut through Chu Fengmian's skin. Too weak. Chu Fengmian curled his lips and clenched his fist. The blade was held in the palm of his hand. As Chu Fengmian exerted his strength, the blade shattered from his palm. The blade, which even a ruler was afraid of, was so fragile in Chu Fengmian's hand. It was crushed right away. Ah! The seventh prince screamed miserably as Chu Fengmian flipped his hand and pressed the seventh prince's body against Chu Fengmian's palm. No matter how much power he exerted and how hard he struggled, he couldn't break free from Chu Fengmian's palm. This is impossible. Oh my God! What kind of body is this? Even such a terrifying blade can't break his body? Is he still human? Even a demonic beast can't have such a terrifying body. the eyeballs of countless warriors in the stands almost fell out. Even sword-slaying Immortal and the others were shocked beyond words. To them, defeating the seventh prince was something they could do easily. But to resist the seventh prince's blade with his body was crazy. Even if they were invincible in the same realm, they wouldn't dare to do such a thing. Many pairs of eyes looked at Chu Fengmian as if they were looking at a monster. Chu Fengmian stood still and let the seventh prince attack. With one palm, he broke all of them. Stop! On the grandstand, an aged voice suddenly sounded. It was the ancestor of the Yan dynasty. He looked at Chu Fengmian and shouted angrily. If you dare to kill him, I'll kill you. The ancestor of the Yan dynasty didn't care about the rules. He stood up and threatened Chu Fengmian loudly. However, Chu Fengmian looked as if he didn't hear anything. He looked at the seventh prince and said indifferently, Die. Chu Fengmian looked at the seventh prince. Ignoring the seventh prince's pleas for mercy, Chu Fengmian mercilessly condensed spiritual energy in his palm. With a squeeze, the seventh prince died in Chu Fengmian's palm. Chu Fengmian didn't waste the seventh prince's essence and blood in empty ring. He took them all and left the arena. Damn it! Damn it! The ancestor of the Yan dynasty was furious when he saw Chu Fengmian's actions. The seventh prince was a genius that the Yan dynasty had painstakingly cultivated. He could be said to be the youngest emperor in the history of the Yan dynasty. He had a bright future, but now he was killed by Chu Fengmian. In particular, Chu Fengmian didn't give him any face and killed the seventh prince in front of everyone. Chu Fengmian, the Yan dynasty will hunt you down forever. The ancestor of the Yan dynasty roared as he watched Chu Fengmian leave the arena. Idiot. Chapter 967. The word idiot was not loud, but it was loud enough to observe the entire ancient era's fighting ring. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the countless martial artists in the stands couldn't help but laugh out loud. He looked at the exasperated ancestor of the Yan dynasty with a mocking look in his eyes. Who was Chu Fengmian? Chu Fengmian wouldn't hesitate to kill anyone from the 7 great sections. Why should they be afraid of a mere destiny dynasty? Speaking of threats, the 7 sects posed a much greater threat to Chu Fengmian than the Destiny dynasty. Even the 7 great sects didn't have the right to ask Chu Fengmian to spare his men. What right did the Empire of Destiny have? What an arrogant kid. I've only heard of him in the past. I didn't expect him to be even more arrogant than the rumors. Huang Wu looked at Chu Fengmian and sneered. I want this person's life. Huang Wu, this kid's life is mine. Jian Zhanxian snorted when he heard Huang Wu's words. Really? Let's see who gets to meet him first. After all, he caused a ruckus in the desolate ancient sect. A few old ancestors were angered to death by him. Killing him would be a great achievement in the desolate ancient sect. Desolate said with a smile. In the desolate ancient sect, the price for Chu Fengmian's life was extremely high. It was said that even the Supreme Ancestor wanted Chu Fengmian's head. He had no idea what Chu Fengmian had done to infuriate the progenitors. If Chu Fengmian heard all of this, he would naturally understand why the Supreme Ancestors of the desolate ancient sect hated him to the core. Chu Fengmian sneaked into the Divine Tree's secret realm and took away the young Divine Tree along with all the Du's sacred fruits. Chu Fengmian had taken away the fruits of the desolate ancient sect's 1,000 years of planning. If it weren't for Chu Fengmian's elusiveness, Ancestor Jidusu would have chased after Chu Fengmian to kill him. But now, Chu Fengmian was too lazy to think about it. As long as Chu Fengmian reached the Destiny realm, he would become an emperor. Even if old Ancestor Wu were to hunt him down, Chu Fengmian would be able to deal with it freely. By then, all the dangers would be averted. Strength. What Chu Fengmian needed was still to increase his strength. My physical body is almost comparable to old Ancestor Wu's. As long as I reach the Heavenly Mandate realm, I will be no different from the real old Ancestor Wu. In the previous battle, Chu Fengmian did not use any martial skills or spiritual weapons. He could easily defeat the 7th prince with his physical strength alone. This kind of physical body had surpassed the level of a ruler. It was no different from great ancestor Wu, who was in the eternal state. What Chu Fengmian lacked now was only his realm and his strength. As long as his strength could improve further, even if Chu Fengmian had not stepped into the immortal realm, he would be no different from ancestor Wu. Congratulations, young master. Gu Jin smiled when he saw Chu Fengmian standing at the edge of the stage. Chu Fengmian's strength seemed to be even stronger than when he was in the ancient city of Ningzhou. In the heavenly tower, Chu Fengmian's harvest was indeed great. His greatest harvest was the innate divine beast Little Nine. Apart from Little Nine, Chu Fengmian's strength had undergone a tremendous change. Now, apart from Jian Zhanxian, the Devil Emperor, and the others, there were very few martial artists who could threaten Chu Fengmian. However, this was only within the scope of the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. If it was outside, any great ancestor Wu was enough to pose a great threat to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's participation in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament was an extremely risky thing to do. When the tournament ended, the great ancestors of the 7 sects would definitely not let Chu Fengmian go. Although Chu Fengmian had a trump card and could escape by using the Cloud Feather Palace, he still needed to increase his strength as much as possible. I want to comprehend the sword technique. You should also get ready and wait for the arena. The edge of the arena was protected by the ancient Colosseum, so it was the safest place. No martial artist or power would affect this place. Even a great ancestor Wu could not attack Chu Fengmian here. Chu Fengmian's mind moved. He opened the empty ring, took out the sword principal totem, and placed it directly in front of him. Of course, the first thing Chu Fengmian did after obtaining the sword principal totem was to comprehend its swordsmanship. The sword principal totem's swordsmanship was enough for Chu Fengmian to perfect the 9 regions swordsmanship. The more perfect the 9 regions swordsmanship was, the stronger Chu Fengmian's strength would be. As a sword cultivator, swordsmanship was his foundation. At the edge of the arena, Chu Fengmian closed his eyes and began to comprehend the sword principal totem's swordsmanship with his spiritual consciousness. He swaggered in front of countless martial artists and began to comprehend the swordsmanship. Damn it! Seeing Chu Fengmian's actions, the surrounding disciples of the Tianjian sect gnashed their teeth. The sword principal totem should have belonged to the Tianjian sect, but now it had fallen into Chu Fengmian's hands. What made them even angrier was that it was not only the sword principal totem that fell into Chu Fengmian's hands. San Yao was still killed by Chu Fengmian. It could be said that the Tianjian sect had suffered a double loss. Everything they had done had become a stepping stone for Chu Fengmian to establish his power. Some of the Tianjian sect disciples saw Chu Fengmian with his eyes closed and started to comprehend the swordsmanship. They quietly gathered their spiritual energy and approached Chu Fengmian. But the moment they were about to make a move, a sudden clap of thunder sounded in everyone's heart. It scared them so much that they broke out in a cold sweat. This clap of thunder was a warning from the ancient gladiator arena. If they dared to make a move at the edge of the arena, they would be killed by the ancient gladiator arena. The ancient gladiator arena was the safest place to comprehend the swordsmanship. The disciples of the Tianjian sect tried several times, but they all shook their heads helplessly. If they dared to make a move, the one who would die would not be Chu Fengmian, but them. In the ancient gladiator arena, it was impossible for them to leave quickly. They could only disperse and leave Chu Fengmian alone. Chu Fengmian saw all of this and felt relieved. It seemed that the rumors were true. The ancient gladiator arena did not allow conflicts. Now that he was safe, Chu Fengmian no longer observed his surroundings. Instead, he devoted himself to comprehending the sword principal totem. He extended his spiritual sense into the sword Dao totem. From these ancient and cryptic words, he could sense the swordsmanship. The 9 regions genius battle continued. The battle between Chu Fengmian and the 9th prince had begun. Chapter 968. Although the sword principal totem contained countless swordsmanship, each of them was obscure and obscure. On the other side of the phone. Even if some sword rulers or even supreme ancestors were to comprehend them, they would need to spend countless years to comprehend one or two of them. It was almost impossible to comprehend it in a short period of time. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian had already comprehended the sword principle totem in his previous life. At that time, the master of sword principle also had a sword principle totem in his hand, so Chu Fengmian went to comprehend it when he had nothing to do. He already had this experience in comprehending the sword principle totem, so he could comprehend it thousands of times faster than ordinary warriors. The 9 regions genius battle would only be carried out one by one. No one knew how long the first round would take. Chu Fengmian was not in a hurry. He sat where he was and continued to comprehend the sword principle totem. After 3 days, Chu Fengmian slowly opened his eyes. In 3 days, Chu Fengmian had already comprehended several swordsmanship in the sword principle totem. All of them had been integrated into the sword domain sword principle. The swordsmanship recorded in the sword principle totem represented the purest swordsmanship in the world. Although it was obscure and difficult to comprehend, it was extremely powerful. Many of the swordsmanship in the current era were passed down from generation to generation from ancient times. In the process of passing down, there were some that were lost and some that were deliberately simplified. After all, most people could not comprehend even one of the swordsmanship in the sword principle totem even after 10,000 years. Because it was too obscure and difficult to comprehend, the swordsmanship in the current era was more or less simplified. Although it was much simpler, its power could not be compared to the original swordsmanship. Chu Fengmian wanted to create the 9 regions sword principle, and the swordsmanship in the sword principle totem was the best choice. He had already integrated several swordsmanship into the 9 regions sword principle. However, this was only an embryonic form. It had not yet been used in battle or practiced. Swordsmanship could only be improved after repeated practice in battles. The 9 regions genius battle was a good place for Chu Fengmian to fight with experts and practice his swordsmanship. It's time for Gu Jin. Chu Fengmian opened his eyes and saw that Gu Jin had already landed on the stage. Chu Fengmian woke up to watch Gu Jin's battle. Gu Jin's opponent was a disciple of the Xian Tian sect. Gu Jin's cultivation level was 1 level higher than his. However, when the two of them fought, their strength was on par. In fact, Gu Jin's strength was slightly stronger. When Chu Fengmian helped Gu Jin increase her cultivation level, it was not only increasing her strength but also increasing her aptitude. Gu Jinchi was stronger than martial artists of the same realm. Even if he was facing martial artists of a higher realm, he would not be at a disadvantage. Boom! In the arena, Gu Jin and the Black Sky Sect's disciples fought fiercely. Gu Jin's battle experience was still too little. Even if he had the advantage in strength, he was still unable to obtain victory. However, as time passed, Gu Jin became more and more familiar with the battle. Finally, she managed to kill the Black Sky Sect's disciple with a single palm strike and obtain victory. The 9 regions genius battle was a battle of life and death. Unless one admitted defeat, it would be a battle to the death. Mercy had no meaning in the world of martial artists. With your current strength, it won't be a problem for you to enter the top 500. It's up to you whether you can enter the top 100. Chu Fengmian looked at Gu Jin and said. He had already taught her everything that he could. Now, it was up to Gu Jin to decide where she wanted to go. Gu Jin nodded and sat beside Chu Fengmian. She closed her eyes and thought about the battle just now. What Gu Jin lacked the most was battle experience. The battle of life and death was enough for her to increase her strength again. Soon, the battles were over. In the first round of the 9 regions genius battle, the strength of the participants was still uneven. For example, Jian Zhanxian, Huang Wu and the others were almost instantly defeated by their opponents. Their opponents were almost powerless to fight back. However, as long as they waited for the next few rounds, when most of the weak were eliminated, every subsequent battle would be a tough one. Chu Fengmian closed his eyes and continued to comprehend the sword principle totem. Another 4 days passed. Chu Fengmian had already comprehended the sword principle totem. After 7 days, the first round of the 9 regions genius battle finally ended. The second round began. Soon, it was Chu Fengmian's turn again. Tianjian Sect's killer of the sword. This was Chu Fengmian's opponent in the second round. Killer of the sword? Another fierce man. Isn't he the madman from the Tianjian sect? Interesting. He's going to fight Chu Fengmian? Watch. These two fierce men are going to fight each other. Seeing the two names flashing in the ancient arena, the martial artists in the stands were excited. Apparently, Killer of the Sword was also a famous figure in the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian took a step forward and entered the arena. His opponent, Killer of the Sword, was already standing in front of Chu Fengmian. Killer of the Sword stood in place and looked at Chu Fengmian with a pair of eyes full of killing intent. He was like a hungry wolf staring at its prey. Oh! An emperor who cultivates the sword principle of slaughter. With a single glance, Chu Fengmian could tell that this sword of death was filled with a piercing sword intent. Within the sword intent, there was an extremely dense blood aura. Obviously, he was a sword cultivator who cultivated the sword principle of slaughter. Chu Fengmian used to cultivate the sword principle of slaughter, but it was too unconventional. Now, Chu Fengmian wouldn't use it easily. However, Killer of the Sword was a pure sword principle of slaughter. The blood chi on his body couldn't be washed away. It was unknown how many creatures he had killed to have such a dense blood chi. He was already a sword demon. A sword demon. You're Chu Fengmian. Killer of the Sword looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. You'll soon become a ghost under my sword. I'll use your blood as a sacrifice to my sword principle. Slaughter. As soon as Killer of the Sword finished speaking, he suddenly attacked. The blood chi filled the sky and spread over. In the heart of this bloody aura, there was a blood-red sword edge. The moment Killer of the Sword attacked, the surrounding space became like a slaughterhouse. He was the butcher, and Chu Fengmian was the prey waiting to be slaughtered. Sword principle of slaughter? I happen to have a sword principle of slaughter. Let's see whose path of slaughter is stronger. Chapter 969. Chu Fengmian had comprehended the Heaven Slaughtering Sword technique in the Sword Totem. The Heaven Slaughtering Sword technique was a major branch of the ancient path of slaughter. It was known as the Heaven Slaughtering Sword technique, but it had been lost in the 9 regions because it was too difficult to cultivate. However, for a sword genius like Chu Fengmian, any swordsmanship would be easily learned by Chu Fengmian. He had just learned the Heaven Slaughtering Sword technique and had yet to put it into practice. Now, the Slayer of the Sword had presented itself to him. Trying to fight me? Are you courting death? The Slayer of the Sword sneered when he saw Chu Fengmian's action. Boundless killing intent was unleashed from his body. This killing intent was completely integrated into the tip of his sword. Suddenly, the Slayer of the Sword's figure was already facing Chu Fengmian. The sword in his hand slashed toward Chu Fengmian. Boom! A bloody mist burst out in the sky. Each of the bloody mists was no less than an all-out attack from an emperor. The blood mist that filled the sky, without any blind spots, bombarded Chu Fengmian. They collided with Chu Fengmian's sword in the air. The bloody mists were directly shattered, and Chu Fengmian's sword was also shattered and disappeared. The clash between the two sword lights was almost a draw. Chu Fengmian is really terrifying. His sword technique is actually not inferior to the Slayer of the Sword. Not only is his body strong, but his sword technique is even stronger. This sword technique is ancient, and I have never heard of it. A sword cultivator muttered to himself. The more proficient a martial artist was in the sword, the more they knew that if there was a gap between sword cultivators and a collision, it would be magnified countless times. The fact that they were evenly matched proved that Chu Fengmian's sword technique was not inferior to the Slayer of the Sword. Let's see. Interesting. Chu Fengmian and the Slayer of the Sword, these two fierce people. I wonder who will win. Countless expectant eyes were looking at the arena. It seemed that this battle was going to be an exciting one. Interesting. Your sword technique is not bad. It's indeed beyond my imagination. The Slayer of the Sword was a little surprised when he saw that they were evenly matched. Then, his face revealed a bit of ferocious killing intent. "Unfortunately, I can't change your fate no matter what. You will still die under my sword in the end." The Slayer of the Sword's figure suddenly disappeared as soon as he finished his words. In the entire arena, the Slayer of the Sword was nowhere to be found. Where is he? Countless bewildered eyes were looking for the Slayer of the Sword. Suddenly, a ray of bloody light of the sword appeared in front of Chu Fengmian. The Slayer of the Sword's shadow of Slayer of the Sword. Heaven and earth. The figure of Killer of the Sword had already become one with his sword light, reaching the state of one with the sword. He of the Slayer of the Sword was the sharpest sword blade. Slayer of the Slayer of the S-Sword. Of the. Its Slayer was a realm and the legend sword of the Slayer of the Sword. To be understood to be. To the Slayer of the Slayer to be had to be comprehenofit to be. To be to. The Slayer of the Sword. He had turned into the sharpest sword blade. His sword slashed toward Chu Fengmian. It was so sharp that the sword blade could not be blocked. Chu Fengmian won't be able to block it. I'm afraid Chu Fengmian is far from reaching the sword principle of the. Some of the warriors began to talk about it. The Slayer of the Sword had comprehended the sword principle of the. Only people like Jian Zhanxian and Huang Wu could defeat him in the 9 regions genius battle. Otherwise, no one could defeat the Slayer of the Sword. Good. Kill him and avenge the Tianjian sect. When the disciples of the Sky Sword sect saw the scene, they all exclaimed in shock. They were all sword cultivators, so they knew what the sword principle of the. Even Huang Wu and the others would suffer a great loss if they encountered this move. This time, Chu Fengmian would be seriously injured, if not killed. But in the next moment, the whole arena was in a state of shock. Chu Fengmian slowly drew his sword and stabbed forward. The Slayer of the Sword's sword blade was suddenly shattered. Even the Slayer of the Sword's body was forced out from the sword blade. The Slayer of the Sword's face was full of defeat. His killing intent disappeared by more than half. The sword blade was broken, which caused great damage to the sword principle of the. Could it be that Chu Fengmian's sword principle is comparable to the Slayer of the Sword? Upon seeing this result, countless martialists thought of a shocking dance step. The sword strike just now was enough to force the Slayer of the Sword out and break his sword principle of the. There were only 2 possibilities. One was brute force. If it was a supreme ancestor, he could do all this with brute force. But Chu Fengmian did not use such brute force. The only other possibility was that Chu Fengmian's sword principle comprehension was not below the Slayer of the Swords. It even surpassed the Slayer of the Swords. As soon as this idea appeared, countless warriors could not believe it. But other than this explanation, there was no other way to explain what had just happened. Terrifying. An emperor could not help but murmur to himself. Most of their understanding of Chu Fengmian's strength was just guesswork. But now, it seemed that Chu Fengmian's strength was far more than what he had shown. Chu Fengmian, I didn't expect you to hide such a sword principle. It seems that the world has underestimated you. Unfortunately, your sword principle is on par with mine, but your realm is far below mine. The Slayer of the Sword looked at Chu Fengmian and sneered. Even if their sword principle was on par, the Slayer of the Sword's realm still surpassed Chu Fengmian's. He was no match for Chu Fengmian in terms of sword principle, but he could crush Chu Fengmian in terms of strength. The Slayer of the Sword was not like the 7th Prince. He was a veteran emperor whose realm was close to the celestial realm. He was 2 realms higher than Chu Fengmian. Seeing that his sword principle had failed, the Slayer of the Sword immediately changed his plan. The sword blade in his hand condensed again. A sword blade of 10,000 feet condensed from the sky and slashed toward Chu Fengmian. This 10,000 feet long sword had no edge, no sharpness, only a heavy force. It wanted to crush everything with power. Come. Chapter 970. Rumble. Even from outside the arena, one could hear the rumbling sounds coming from the arena. In the arena, the two sword edges caused the world to be turned upside down. Any one of the aftershocks was enough to flatten a 100-meter-tall mountain in the 9 regions. Countless spiritual energies collided with each other in the arena, causing a continuous roar. Chu Fengmian, let's see how many more times you can resist. Slay of the Sword looked at Chu Fengmian and roared ferociously. The sword edge in his hand bombarded Chu Fengmian again and again. The sword didn't seem to have any time to rest as it continued to bombard Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian, on the other hand, could only stand on the spot and constantly block the falling sword edge. As long as Chu Fengmian wanted to take a breath, the sword edge would fall, leaving Chu Fengmian no chance to take a breath. Not to mention counterattacking. It's a stalemate. I didn't expect their strength to be on par. But it seems that Chu Fengmian is going to lose this battle. His swordsmanship, even the Slay of the Sword, is a level higher. It's a pity that his realm is still too low. The gap between realms is not so easy to make up. Jian Zhanxian muttered to himself when he saw this scene. The current situation seemed to be evenly matched, but Chu Fengmian had always been at a disadvantage. He could only resist passively. In order to resist the Slay of the Sword's edge, Chu Fengmian had to consume a lot of spiritual energy. In this stalemate situation, what mattered was endurance. After all, the Slay of the Sword was an emperor in the Destiny realm. In terms of the amount of spiritual energy, he was naturally far superior to Chu Fengmian. After all, Chu Fengmian was only in the divine martial arts realm. Chu Fengmian could make up for the difference of 2 realms. However, Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy was abundant. Naturally, Chu Fengmian couldn't resist the Slay of the Sword. If this stalemate continues, Chu Fengmian's ancestral spiritual energy will be depleted. Although it's a little exhausting, it's not wrong. Baron Wushuang nodded and said from the side. Now, the kill of the sword was bombarding Chu Fengmian countless times. It was competing with Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy, so Chu Fengmian had no time to fight back. He could only compete with his spiritual energy. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. Chu Fengmian and Kill of the Sword's swordsmanship continued to clash. However, as time passed, Chu Fengmian's spiritual power didn't seem to be empty at all. On the contrary, the more he fought, the braver he became. Even his swordsmanship had become more and more proficient. On the other hand, Sword of Death was beginning to overdraw his spiritual power. Although his attacks were still fierce, he was still able to attack. However, the crowd could already tell that Deathly Sword was barely holding on. This was beyond anyone's imagination. How can this kid's spiritual energy be so strong? Almost endless? Seeing Chu Fengmian holding the spiritual sword in his hand, Killer of the Sword felt like he was going to die from anger. His original plan was to crush Chu Fengmian to death with his spiritual power. However, he didn't expect that Chu Fengmian's spiritual power was still not exhausted. Instead, his spiritual power was almost depleted. If this went on, he would be the one to lose. This kid is strange. Let's fight. Killer of the Sword's eyes flickered with killing intent. The sword in his hand suddenly paused. Then, he pushed his killing intent to the extreme. This killing intent condensed layer by layer on the tip of the sword in his hand. Behind the killing sword, an image of the unparalleled god of slaughter condensed and strengthened his power. Slaughter of the heavens and earth. Killer of the Sword's sword fell again. The power of this sword had reached the extreme. The ultimate killing intent and Killer of the Sword's slaughter sword principle had been fully stimulated. His entire body was covered in a bloody mist, and all of his spiritual energy had been condensed into this sword. This was the real killing move. Boom! Chu Fengmian felt the sword intent. It was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him. It made him a little breathless. The space was compressed and condensed. This was the most terrifying move that Killer of the Sword had ever made. Kid, go to hell! Killer of the Sword looked at Chu Fengmian ferociously and roared loudly. His words were full of killing intent. This is your last move. Killer of the Sword, can't you see that I've been using you to practice my swordsmanship? Now that my swordsmanship has reached the great success level, you're useless. Chu Fengmian looked at Killer of the Sword and sneered. Now, you should die too. Slaughtering the heavens. Chu Fengmian spat out 2 words. It was just 2 words, but all the warriors who heard Chu Fengmian's voice shuddered. Even some of the sovereigns were no exception. The slaughtering the heavens swordsmanship was known as slaughtering the heavens. The peak of the slaughtering swordsmanship was to slaughter the world. All the gods in the world would be slaughtered. His slaughtering the heavens swordsmanship was constantly perfected and practiced by Killer of the Sword. It had reached the great success level and was integrated into the 9 regions swordsmanship. Now, Killer of the Sword was useless. Rumble. Chu Fengmian opened his eyes. His eyes were blood red, and his killing intent soared to the sky. This killing intent dyed the entire arena blood red. Killer of the Sword was caught in the killing intent, and his heart was trembling. He had killed countless creatures in order to practice his slaughtering swordsmanship. He could be said to be a butcher, a sword demon, but now, he was like a baby in front of Chu Fengmian, shivering. Chu Fengmian's killing intent was hundreds of times more terrifying than Killer of the Sword. Destroy. With the word destroy, Chu Fengmian's sword edge slowly fell. Killer of the Sword's sword was directly shattered in front of the sword edge. His bloody mist and killing intent were mercilessly shattered. His body was destroyed by the sword edge. Only his blood essence was left in the air, which was slowly devoured by Chu Fengmian and integrated into the divine tree. One move, instant kill. In the previous situation, Killer of the Sword had been constantly bombarding Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian stood where he was and used his swordsmanship to resist. Chu Fengmian, who was about to lose, made a shocking reversal with one move. Killer of the Sword died just like that? He used an sovereign to practice his swordsmanship. Is this kid really that confident? Chapter 971. Among the young geniuses of the 9 regions, the Killer of the Sword was one of the best. He was only below Jian Zhanxian and the others. If he hadn't met Chu Fengmian in the 9 regions genius competition, he would have been able to rank in the top 20, or even the top 10. But now, Chu Fengmian was using such a person to practice swordsmanship. Using the Killer of the Sword as a sparring partner was useless. Killing him casually? Arrogant. Everyone thought of this word in their hearts. Chu Fengmian's character was extremely arrogant. But now, he was qualified to be arrogant. The Killer of the Sword was like a toy in Chu Fengmian's hands. Crack. In the stands, countless cracks appeared on the chair where immortal Jianke sat. He clenched his fists, and the anger in his eyes reached the extreme. The Killer of the Sword was one of the geniuses that the Tianjian sect had focused on cultivating. In the future, he might even become a supreme ancestor. But now, he had died in the hands of Chu Fengmian. Even his essence and blood had been devoured by Chu Fengmian. Even if the Tianjian sect had the ability to reach the heavens, they couldn't resurrect the Killer of the Sword. Slaying the Celestial, you must kill him. Immortal Jianke looked at Jian Zhanxian and said furiously. Jian Zhanxian nodded. He looked at Chu Fengmian, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. This time, if they didn't kill Chu Fengmian, the Tianjian sect would never be able to raise their heads again. Seeing the killing intent of immortal Jianke and Jian Zhanxian, Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a cold smile. The hatred between him and the Tianjian sect could be described as endless. Even if he showed mercy, the Tianjian sect wouldn't remember Chu Fengmian's kindness. Moreover, Chu Fengmian didn't intend to show mercy to his enemies. Chu Fengmian sat below the stage and closed his eyes again. In his mind, he carefully recalled the scene of the battle just now. Chu Fengmian did not use any other swordsmanship in the battle with the Killer of the Sword. He only used the heaven-slaughtering swordsmanship. He wanted to practice his swordsmanship. He had already finished practicing his heaven-slaughtering swordsmanship. With Chu Fengmian's current understanding of swordsmanship, he could master the swordsmanship through a comprehensive study after a few battles. From Chu Fengmian's mind, the ancient book that recorded the 9 realms sword technique opened once again. From the blank page, it recorded the heaven-slaughtering sword technique. Chu Fengmian sensed that the power in his body had become stronger because of the integration of the heaven-slaughtering sword technique. The 9 realms swordsmanship was already tied to Chu Fengmian. The perfection of the 9 realms swordsmanship was enough to allow Chu Fengmian's realm to continuously increase. However, it was far from enough for Chu Fengmian to make a breakthrough in his realm. If he wanted to make a breakthrough, he would have to constantly integrate the sword principles he had comprehended into the 9 zone sword arts. After doing all this, Chu Fengmian took out the sword principle totem again, placed it in front of him, and closed his eyes. He began to comprehend the sword principle totem. There were more than dozens of sword principles in the sword principle totem. If Chu Fengmian could comprehend all the sword principles in the sword principle totem and integrate them into the 9 realms swordsmanship, he would continue to practice. By then, Chu Fengmian's strength would increase by leaps and bounds even if he had not made a breakthrough in his realm. Chu Fengmian did not participate in the next few battles. Almost all his opponents automatically forfeited when they heard Chu Fengmian's name. The 7th prince and the killer of the sword had both died in Chu Fengmian's hands. Many of their strengths were far inferior to the 2 of them. If they fought with Chu Fengmian, they would definitely lose, so they all took the initiative to forfeit. Chu Fengmian did not care. If he encountered a weak opponent, he would not even be qualified to practice his swordsmanship. Without being disturbed, Chu Fengmian immersed himself in the sword principle totem and continued to comprehend. Another 7 days passed. Chu Fengmian had already comprehended close to 100 sword principles from the sword principle totem. He was about to reach his limit. The sword principle totem in front of Chu Fengmian was only the last of the 19 sword principle totems. The swordsmanship recorded was also the least. For most sword practitioners, it was impossible for them to comprehend all the swordsmanship in their lifetime. However, 15 days was more or less enough for Chu Fengmian. Now, Chu Fengmian felt that he had already comprehended 101 swordsmanship in the sword principle totem. There was only one left that he had not yet comprehended. The last swordsmanship seemed to be more obscure and difficult to understand than all the previous swordsmanship combined. Even Chu Fengmian felt that it was extremely tricky. I don't believe that there is a swordsmanship in the world that I can't comprehend. Chu Fengmian's eyes showed some seriousness. Chu Fengmian was a genius in sword principle. He was a genius with a higher aptitude than the master of sword principle. There was nothing in the 9 regions sword principle that Chu Fengmian could not comprehend. It was the same for the sword principle totem. Another 3 days passed. Chu Fengmian's forehead was already covered with countless beads of sweat. Wholeheartedly comprehending the swordsmanship was an extremely tiring thing for Chu Fengmian. When Chu Fengmian was about to collapse, he finally slowly opened his eyes and breathed a sigh of relief. The last swordsmanship of the sword principle totem was finally comprehended by Chu Fengmian. This swordsmanship is actually just an incomplete piece. The swordsmanship that Chu Fengmian had painstakingly comprehended was actually just an incomplete piece. It could not even be considered a complete swordsmanship. However, when Chu Fengmian carefully read the content recorded in the swordsmanship, there was no disappointment in his eyes. Instead, there was an indescribable excitement in his eyes. Although this unknown swordsmanship was only an incomplete piece with very little content recorded, Chu Fengmian could feel the true essence of sword principle from the fragmented content. The true essence of sword principle had always been an illusory rumor. It was said that any swordsmanship was qualified to approach the true essence of sword principle. The swordsmanship that was the closest to the true essence of sword principle was the best swordsmanship in the world. For example, the slaughter swordsmanship, the heaven slaughtering swordsmanship, and even the 9 regions sword principle that Chu Fengmian was currently practicing were already the best among thousands of swordsmanships. However, Chu Fengmian still felt that these swordsmanships were still far from approaching the true essence of sword principle. However, the incomplete piece of unknown swordsmanship in front of him made Chu Fengmian feel the true essence of sword principle. Just by reading some of it, Chu Fengmian felt that his sword principle was about to go further. The swordsmanship recorded in this incomplete piece is extraordinary. Chapter 972. Chu Fengmian was immersed in the true essence of the Sword Dao. He was trying to comprehend the pinnacle of the Sword Dao. However, the content of this fragment was too little. Chu Fengmian longed for it, but he couldn't decipher its true essence. It seems that I have to find other Sword Dao totems to complete this fragment. The Sword Dao totem really does have a great secret. The last sword technique of the Sword Dao totem was hidden very deeply. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian had tried to comprehend the Sword Dao totem countless times, but he never noticed the last hidden sword technique. Chu Fengmian's second life was extremely beneficial to his state of mind and his understanding of the sword principle. Now, Chu Fengmian's sword principle was clearer than in his previous life. Only then did he realize that the sword principle totem still hid the last unknown swordsmanship. The origin of the Sword Dao totem had always been one of the mysteries of the 9 zones. It was said that it had been passed down from the Desolate Era. Therefore, there were many different opinions about the Sword Dao totem's secret. Now, it seemed that this unknown sword technique was the secret of the Sword Dao totem. Only by obtaining all 19 Sword Dao totems would he be able to fully comprehend this unknown sword technique. Chu Fengmian felt that as long as he fully comprehended this unknown sword technique, his Sword Dao would take another step forward and reach an unimaginable level. However, it was easier said than done. In reality, it was harder than ascending to the heavens. Less than 10 Sword Dao totems had appeared in the 9 zones. Moreover, most of them were in the hands of giants like the Tianjian sect. It wouldn't be difficult for Chu Fengmian to obtain all of them. The Tianjian sect should have 7 more Sword Dao totems. If I obtain all of them, they will be of great use to me. At the very least, it won't be a problem for me to reach the heavenly fate realm. Chu Fengmian secretly planned how to obtain the Tianjian sect Sword Dao totem. Although this plan was difficult, it wasn't impossible. However, Chu Fengmian's mind was still focused on the 9 zones genius tournament. Chu Fengmian slowly opened his eyes and looked at the arena. The 9 regions genius battle was nearing its end. However, this was the most exciting part of the 9 regions genius battle. At this point, it was time for the experts from all walks of life to fight each other. Every battle was extremely exciting. Sword Slayer Immortal, Desolation, Demon Emperor, and the others had also overcome all difficulties along the way. They had already reached this step with ease, without any suspense. The 2 reverends from the 6 Paths Demon Gate had also entered this round. The rest were the geniuses from the 7 sects and some experts from the hidden families. Most of the hidden aristocratic families were established by the bloodlines left behind by some powerful sects in ancient times. They had extremely ancient techniques that were extremely powerful. However, they were not enough to establish their own sections. Instead, they established their own clans and secluded themselves from the world, passing down their techniques generation after generation. Although these hidden families rarely appeared in the 9 regions, no one dared to look down on them. It was even rumored that if the hidden families of the 9 regions were to join forces, they would form a force that would not be inferior to the 7 great sects. Next battle, Chu Fengmian versus the Human Demon Reverend. Chu Fengmian's name lit up in the ancient arena again. Chu Fengmian's opponent was the Human Demon sect's Reverend from the 6 Paths Demon Gate. Kill him. When the Demon Emperor saw these 2 names, he said to a young man beside him. Yes. With a flash, the young man entered the arena. The Human Demon Reverend didn't look like a reverend from the 6 Paths Demon Gate. Instead, he looked more like a handsome youth. His skin was white and flawless. If it wasn't for his identity, everyone would have mistaken him for a young master from some clan. You're Chu Fengmian. The Human Demon Reverend looked at Chu Fengmian and revealed a cold smile. I don't know what you've done to make the Sage Emperor so angry. However, the Sage Emperor has already given the order. If you meet me now, you'll die. The moment the Human Demon Reverend spoke, his demonic intent spread out without any concealment. In the land of demonic intent, demons danced wildly. In an instant, the surrounding space had turned into a demonic domain. There are many people who boast like you. It's a pity that every one of them died in my hands. You'll be the same. Chu Fengmian laughed loudly when he heard the human demon reverend's words. Sharp sword intent spread out from Chu Fengmian's body and killed all the demons that quietly approached him. Both of them are very strong. I wonder who's stronger between the two of them. I can finally see their true strength. In the past, both Chu Fengmian and the human demon supremacy had crushed their enemies with overwhelming force. Even when Chu Fengmian encountered the killer of the sword, he was able to kill his opponent with ease. If he truly attacked, he would be able to kill his opponent with a single slash. It could be said that he hadn't shown his true strength yet. It was the same for the human demon reverend. The sudden rise of the Six Paths Demon Gate had stirred up countless rumors in the 9 domains. Everyone was looking forward to this battle. Where's your ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword? Take it out. The human demon reverend glanced at the spiritual sword in Chu Fengmian's hand and suddenly said, "The ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword, the supreme treasure of the Dragon Clan, should be in your hands, right? You don't need to worry about whether I use the ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword or not. At least for now, you're not worthy of me using it." Chu Fengmian shook his head when he heard the human demon reverend's words. Not worthy. The human demon reverend's eyes turned cold when he heard the word. Very well, Chu Fengmian. You're arrogant enough. Let's see how long you can be arrogant today. The human demon reverend snorted coldly and gathered his demonic intent in his palm. Suddenly, he struck at Chu Fengmian with his palm. The human demon reverend's technique was completely demonic. Not only did his palm strike contain terrifying demonic intent, but it also contained layers of heart demons. A chaotic image appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. His eyes were a little sluggish. What's going on? Is Chu Fengmian scared out of his wits? Some of the martial artists on the spectator stand were confused when they saw Chu Fengmian's sudden change. Heart demon. It's the great heart demon art. One of the martial highness realm cultivators said as a thought crossed his mind. Chapter 973. What? The Great Heart Demon Mantra? The Great Heart Demon Mantra caused an uproar in the stands. The Great Heart Demon Mantra was one of the most terrifying mantras of the demonic path. Every martial artist had a heart demon. The more powerful a martial artist was, the more severe their heart demon would be. Normally, it wouldn't have any effect, but once the heart demon erupted, it could even threaten one's life. Countless experts throughout history had their bodies taken over by the heart demon, causing them to fall into a state of madness. Moreover, even if one had the means to suppress the heart demon, it would take a lot of time. That time was enough for one to die thousands of times in a battle. Therefore, the Great Heart Demon Mantra was the most dreaded technique when fighting against the demonic path. Due to the terror of the Great Heart Demon Mantra, it was destroyed along with the destruction of the 6 demonic gates tens of thousands of years ago, never to be passed down again. But today, with the appearance of the 6 demonic gates, the Great Heart Demon Mantra was once again used by the human demon Supreme Lord. This time, Chu Fengmian is in trouble. Unprepared for the Great Heart Demon Mantra, he's dead for sure. Countless martial artists didn't expect the human demon Supreme Lord to use such an absolute killing move right from the start, causing an uproar. Many sovereigns at the edge of the arena, including Jianwang, stared at the human demon Supreme Lord as if they were considering how to deal with the Great Heart Demon Mantra. Great Heart Demon Mantra? You dare to use such a childish trick on me? Chu Fengmian recovered in an instant. He wasn't even afraid of the heart demon of the heavenly tribulation, so the human demon Supreme Lord's Great Heart Demon Mantra was useless against him. Whoosh! Chu Fengmian's spiritual sword was suddenly unsheathed, and a sword ray slashed at the human demon Supreme Lord's palm. Bang! The condensed spiritual energy in front of the human demon Supreme Lord was shattered on the spot by Chu Fengmian's sword, and he was suddenly sent flying. A 3-inch wound was left on the human demon supremacy's arm. Drops of blood flowed down the arm of the human demon supremacy. These drops of essence blood weren't the usual red, but a kind of black-purple. Every drop that flowed down would gradually dissipate, turning into extremely pure demonic will. The Great Heart Demon mantra is actually ineffective against Chu Fengmian. Seeing the injured human demon High Lord, countless people looked at Chu Fengmian in disbelief. Just now, the human demon Venerable had taken the initiative to use the Great Heart Demon mantra. Even if Chu Fengmian had a way to deal with it, he should still hesitate. However, from the looks of it now, Chu Fengmian was not affected in the slightest. Just how tough was his mind to be able to be completely unaffected by the Great Heart Demon mantra? Monster, this Chu Fengmian is really a monster. Could it be that he is really a monster that can stand on equal footing with the Demon Emperor? Some warriors looked at Chu Fengmian and muttered to themselves. Everyone knew how terrifying the Great Heart Demon technique was. Even some rulers or even some supreme ancestors would be in danger if they rashly encountered the technique. Dispelling the effects of the major demon heart mantra was not an easy task, let alone completely disregarding its effects. His mental fortitude had already reached an unimaginable level. Even when Chu Fengmian showed the talent of the 12th layer of the Heaven's Chosen Stone, no one thought that he could stand on equal footing with the Demon Emperor. But now, Chu Fengmian's performance had exceeded everyone's imagination. Very good. You are indeed capable to be the Saint Emperor's opponent. If you die in the hands of the Great Heart Demon mantra, you are not worthy to be the Saint Emperor's opponent. The human demon High Lord roared angrily. The surrounding demonic will all merged into his body. The human demon High Lord opened his mouth and swallowed all the demonic will into his body. Bang! 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 The demonic will seemed to have transformed the human demon High Lord's body into an unimaginable state. The injury on his arm recovered in an instant. Then, a layer of purple scales slowly grew out from his skin. The human demon High Lord's body swelled, becoming taller and taller. In a breath's time, his body had expanded dozens of times. Demonization. The human demon High Lord in front of him was his true form. The human demon High Lord was originally an emperor of the heavenly fate realm. His strength was outstanding among countless emperors of the heavenly fate realm. After demonification, his strength rose once again, reaching an unimaginably terrifying level. Paramount Realm. An emperor shouted in disbelief as he stared at the human demon High Lord. He saw that the human demon High Lord's realm seemed to have broken through a critical point. After demonization, the human demon High Lord's realm had reached the 8th step of the life and death steps, the Paramount Realm. Chu Fengmian, you are qualified to witness my true strength. It is your honor to die under my full strength. The human demon High Lord's voice became hoarse. His body had turned into an ancient demon god. With a loud roar, all the spiritual energy in his body was integrated into the wind of his fist. Suddenly, he punched out. Demonic will scattered in all directions. The power of the Paramount Realm was directly blasted out by the human demon High Lord's punch. The surrounding space was about to be torn into pieces. The entire ancient gladiator arena was shaken. This is the High Lord of the 6-path demon gates. How could a High Lord reach such strength? The Paramount Realm was the level of half-step supreme ancestor. It could be said that it surpassed countless emperors. As long as it took one more step, it would break through the immortal realm and step into the supreme ancestor realm. The human demon High Lord's full strength had reached such a level. The strength of the 6-path demon gates is unfathomable. Some warriors looked at the human demon High Lord's strength and thought inwardly. The human demon High Lord was only one of the High Lords of the 6-path demon gates. If the human demon High Lord was so terrifying, then wouldn't the demon emperor be even more terrifying? After all, a figure like the human demon High Lord was willing to serve the demon emperor. If Chu Fengmian can pass this trial, he will be able to stand at the peak of the younger generation. Most of the warriors looked at Chu Fengmian. The human demon High Lord's strength had been forced out. They wanted to see if Chu Fengmian's trump card could withstand this punch. Paramount Realm? It's useless. If you can't reach the Supreme Ancestor's level, it doesn't matter how high your realm is. In the arena, Chu Fengmian looked at the human demon High Lord's shocking punch with disdain. Chapter 974. What is he going to do? Is Chu Fengmian still not going to use his spiritual weapon? Could it be that Chu Fengmian is going to fight the human demon supremacy with his physical body? Is he crazy? Or is he courting death? The spectators were shocked by Chu Fengmian's actions. They knew that Chu Fengmian still had trump cards. It was rumored that Chu Fengmian had the ancestral dragon supreme sword and the battle dragon chariot. Once he used these two spiritual weapons, his strength would be much more than that. But now, Chu Fengmian was still not going to use his spiritual weapons in the face of the human demon supremacy's attack. Choosing to take the attack of a Paramount Realm expert head-on was no different from committing suicide. Too arrogant. Desolate Void looked at Chu Fengmian and shook his head. He was not the only one. Even Soar Immortal and the others felt that Chu Fengmian was being too arrogant after seeing his actions. Even they didn't dare to say that they could resist the human demon supremacy's attack with their physical body. Courting death? The human demon supremacy's face turned even colder when he saw Chu Fengmian's actions. Now that Chu Fengmian wasn't using his spiritual weapon, it was his best chance. The human demon supremacy's spiritual energy surged again. His demonic will was completely integrated into his fist wind, and his speed was countless times faster. He bombarded Chu Fengmian with his fists. Obviously, he was going to take advantage of this opportunity to kill Chu Fengmian without giving him any chance to retaliate. With such speed, Chu Fengmian couldn't even activate his spiritual weapon in time. Oh no, Chu Fengmian is too arrogant. I'm afraid Chu Fengmian will be killed by such an attack. The spectators became nervous when they saw the changes in the human demon supremacy's strength. If it was said that Chu Fengmian was overconfident in resisting the attack just now, then even if Chu Fengmian resisted it, he would only suffer a small loss. But now, if Chu Fengmian tried to resist the human demon supremacy's punch with his physical body, he might even be killed on the spot. When the martial artists from the Six Paths Demon sect saw this scene, they all revealed smiles on their faces. They didn't believe that Chu Fengmian could withstand such a punch. Now was the best opportunity to kill Chu Fengmian. In the arena, as the fist neared Chu Fengmian's body, Chu Fengmian's eyes widened. Only then did Chu Fengmian's figure move slowly. A dragon might rose from his body and started to merge with Chu Fengmian's body. Roar! As a dragon roar resounded through the world, the dragon might on Chu Fengmian's body immediately condensed into layers of dragon scales. Chu Fengmian's body underwent a tremendous transformation. In an instant, Chu Fengmian's body turned into a huge primordial war dragon that contained terrifying dragon power. Then, he charged at the human demon supremacy with his body. Battle dragon dances in the heavens. The massive primordial war dragon immediately rushed forward and crushed the fist winds of the human demon supremacy layer by layer with its terrifying power. More than half of the remaining power bombarded the human demon supremacy's body, sending him flying 1,000 miles away. A clear claw mark could be seen on his chest. Black-purple demonic blood flowed down the wound and dripped down. Damn it! Damn it! Kid, I'm going to kill you. Birth of the demonic seed, human demon power. The human demon supremacy was sent flying. His hair was disheveled and his face was filled with anger. Today, I'll kill you. From the human demon sovereign's chest, a fist-sized seed suddenly condensed and then shattered. The terrifying demonic will from the fist-sized seed merged with the human demon supremacy's body. Immediately, the human demon supremacy's strength began to rise again. Human demon seed? Good stuff. This must be the inheritance seed of the human demon sect of the Six Paths Demon sect. I didn't expect you to take out such a thing. Since that's the case, give it to me. Everlasting sword art, break. Sword intent immediately gathered in Chu Fengmian's palm. In a breath's time, hundreds of swords slashed out at the same time, piercing into the human demon supremacy's body and scattering the demonic intent around him. At the same time, Chu Fengmian suddenly attacked. The colossal war dragon claw immediately grabbed the human demon's seed in front of the human demon supremacy. Bang! The demonic will of the human demon's seed was shattered by Chu Fengmian's dragon might. With a wave of his hand, the seed fell into Chu Fengmian's palm. The inheritance of the Six Paths Demon sect was inherited from the human demon seed. Chu Fengmian had heard about it before. He didn't expect the human demon supremacy to have the human demon seed. Now that the human demon seed had fallen into Chu Fengmian's hand, he could obtain the inheritance of the Six Paths Demon sect through it. The supreme treasure of the Six Paths Demon sect had fallen into Chu Fengmian's hand. Damn it! Give it back to me! When the human demon supremacy saw Chu Fengmian take away the human demon seed, his face turned crazy. All of his power came from the demonic human seed. If the demonic human seed was taken away, his power would not be able to advance any further. Give it back to you? Do you think you're qualified? Moreover, you're useless now. Die! Chu Fengmian looked at the human demon supremacy with disdain. After losing the human demon seed, the human demon supremacy's strength had recovered to the level of an ordinary emperor. Chu Fengmian didn't put him in his eyes at all. Hundreds of sword chi condensed around Chu Fengmian and slashed at the human demon supremacy. The human demon supremacy's body was instantly pierced by countless sword chi. Bang bang bang. A series of earth-shattering sounds rang out from the human demon supremacy's body. Countless blood splattered in the air. All of them were shattered and minced by the sword chi. Only a lump of flesh was left in the air. There was no trace of the human demon supremacy. Even so, the human demon supremacy was still alive. He had reached the Emperor realm and his vitality had reached a terrifying level. The lump of flesh was still condensing and reforming. Kid, you can kill me. Don't worry, I'll take back the human demon seed sooner or later. From this mass of flesh and blood, the human demon High Lord's resentful voice could be heard. I surrender. In the ancient gladiator arena, as long as one wanted to surrender, they could take the initiative to do so. However, before the human demon supremacy could finish his words, Chu Fengmian's body turned into a bolt of lightning and suddenly appeared in front of him. Chapter 975. As he spoke, Chu Fengmian sent another palm strike at the human demon supremacy. Once again, the lump of flesh was smashed into pieces by Chu Fengmian's palm. The human demon supremacy didn't even have the strength to utter the words I surrender. Ravaged. The cultivators on the spectator's stand all sucked in a breath of cold air. Judging from Chu Fengmian's previous attack, it wasn't that he didn't have a way to kill the human demon supremacy, but that he didn't intend to do so. He had been ravaging the human demon supremacy all this time. The crowd stared blankly at the unbelievable scene. A High Lord from the Six Paths Demon Gate was like a piece of trash in Chu Fengmian's hands, being trampled on. He was a sovereign of the heavenly realm, someone who had surpassed the heavenly mandate realm and stood at the peak of the 9 domains. Yet, he couldn't even resist Chu Fengmian's attack and was defeated so miserably. Supremacy. The disciples of the Six Paths Demon Gate were no longer as complacent as before. Their faces turned ugly when they saw the human demon supremacy being ravaged by Chu Fengmian. Even the demon emperor's face turned gloomy. He didn't bother to conceal the anger on his face. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't interfere with the battle in the ancient gladiator arena, he would have personally come to kill Chu Fengmian. Let him go. As long as you let him go, the enmity between the Six Paths Demon Gate and you will be written off. The demon emperor looked at Chu Fengmian and suddenly spoke. He couldn't enter the ancient gladiator arena, but his voice could be heard from outside. Oh? Let him go? Chu Fengmian suddenly stopped when he heard the demon emperor's words. He used his spiritual energy to suppress the human demon supremacy. On the other hand, he looked at the demon emperor with interest. That's right. As long as you let him go, the enmity between the Six Paths Demon Gate and you will be written off. The matter of you killing 2 supremacies of the Six Paths Demon Gate will also be written off. The demon emperor calmly spoke to Chu Fengmian. Although the inheritance of the 6 demon gates was ancient, it was still not easy for them to rise again in this era. The 6 demon lords of the 6 paths demon gates were also rare geniuses in the 9 domains. The battle demon supremacy and the lone demon supremacy had both died at Chu Fengmian's hands. If the human demon supremacy were to die at Chu Fengmian's hands, it would be a huge blow to them. Thus, at that moment, even the demon emperor could only suppress the anger in his heart and discuss with Chu Fengmian. Let bygones be bygones. I don't care. I'm not even afraid of the 7 great sects, so why would I be afraid of a mere 6 paths demon gate? Chu Fengmian suddenly laughed when he heard the demon emperor's words. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the demon emperor's face became even gloomier. At this time, Chu Fengmian suddenly changed the topic and opened his mouth. However, it's not impossible to let him go, but I have a condition. What conditions? The demon emperor's eyes turned cold when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. The wealth of the 6 paths demon gates was no less than that of the 7 great sections. This condition was acceptable to them. It's very simple. I'll let him go from the Tianjian sect in exchange for a sword Dao totem. Naturally, I'll let him go in exchange for a sword Dao totem. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a smile. The human demon supremacy is much more useful than that trash from the Tianjian sect. This condition isn't too much, right? That trash from the Tianjian sect didn't have a sword Dao totem. Hearing Chu Fengmian mention this matter again, the Tianjian sect disciples below were furious to the extreme. The Tianjian sect had never suffered such humiliation. They had lost their sword Dao totem, and Song Yao had died at the hands of Chu Fengmian. After such a big loss, the Tianjian sect disciples couldn't wait to bury this secret underground. However, Chu Fengmian mentioned it again and again, which was tantamount to exposing their scars. Sword Dao totem, the demon emperor's eyes flickered with a strange light. He didn't refuse, nor did he answer. He seemed to be thinking. Seeing this, Chu Fengmian was secretly delighted. He only wanted to test the waters. He didn't expect the 6 paths demon gates to really have a sword Dao totem. Except for the 7 sword Dao totem left in the Tianjian sect, the rest of the sword Dao totem had disappeared. He didn't know where they were. The 6 paths demon gates, as a sect that once stood at the top of the 9 domains, had very likely obtained a sword Dao totem. Chu Fengmian only wanted to test the waters. Seeing the demon emperor's hesitation, Chu Fengmian was right to test him. The 6 paths demon gates really did have a sword Dao totem. After pondering for a while, the demon emperor's eyes showed some determination. He seemed to have made a decision. Okay, I'm willing to exchange the sword Dao totem for the human demon supremacy's life. Release the human demon supremacy, and I'll give you the sword Dao totem. The demon emperor looked at Chu Fengmian and said slowly. Release him first? Do you think I'm stupid? Chu Fengmian said with a cold smile. Even the 7 great sects could go back on their word at this time, let alone the 6 paths demon gates. Chu Fengmian didn't believe the demon emperor's nonsense. He was afraid that the demon emperor wouldn't give him the sword Dao totem even if he released the human demon supremacy. If the Tianjian sect dared to break the contract in public, why wouldn't the demon emperor? Hurry up and give me the sword Dao totem, and I'll release him. Otherwise, I'll kill him. The blood essence of an emperor is very useful to me. Chu Fengmian suddenly grabbed the human demon supremacy beside him. Immediately, the human demon supremacy's blood essence was drawn out by Chu Fengmian. Ah! The human demon supremacy couldn't bear the pain. Screams of agony could be heard from the arena. The demon emperor's eyes showed some haze. His original plan had been completely seen through by Chu Fengmian. It seemed that Chu Fengmian wasn't as young as he looked. However, the human demon supremacy couldn't die today. Okay, I'll give you the sword Dao totem. Let him go. The demon emperor waved his hand, and a sword principal totem, which was half the height of a man, was suddenly thrown from below the arena. Chu Fengmian gathered his spiritual energy and grabbed it. With a glance, Chu Fengmian saw that it was a real sword Dao totem. That's right. It was the 4th-ranked sword Dao totem. No wonder the Demon Emperor was so reluctant. The 4th-ranked sword Dao totem was precious enough. There were 19 sword Dao totem, and the higher the number, the more precious it was. It seemed that the 6 paths demon gates only had 1 sword Dao totem. That was why they were so reluctant to give it to Chu Fengmian. Chapter 976. With Chu Fengmian's current comprehension of the sword path, it was not difficult for him to comprehend the sword path totem. Moreover, Chu Fengmian had discovered the secret of the sword path totem. The unknown swordsmanship might very well represent the true essence of the sword path. This also made Chu Fengmian even more obsessed with collecting sword path totems. Chu Fengmian did not expect that the Devil Emperor would hand over the sword path totem to him so readily. The 4th-ranked sword path totem was much more precious than the one that the Tianjian sect gave to Chu Fengmian, which was ranked 19th. It was unusual for the Devil Emperor to hand it over so readily. Oh? Is that so? Chu Fengmian used his spiritual sense to explore the sword path totem. All of a sudden, he sneered. As expected, it was impossible for the Devil Emperor to hand over the sword path totem so readily. Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense carefully explored the sword path totem and found that there was a drop of dark purple demon blood in the most secretive place of the sword path totem. The demon blood was hidden very well. It could be said that only Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense, which was different from that of ordinary people, could detect it. Ordinary rulers and even some supreme ancestors might not be able to discover it if they were not careful. At that time, whoever tried to comprehend the sword Dao totem would have the drop of demon blood silently enter the warrior's body. If a drop of demon blood entered Chu Fengmian's body, it would be very troublesome for him. Especially if it suddenly erupted, it could be said to be fatal. Obviously, the demon blood had been planted in the sword path totem by the Devil Emperor long ago. All of the Devil Emperor's current expressions were actually an act. His real intention was to deal with Chu Fengmian. He sent the sword path totem to Chu Fengmian because he wanted to use the demon blood to deal with him. He even wanted to find an opportunity to use the demon blood to control Chu Fengmian. At that time, Chu Fengmian would become the Devil Emperor's slave and be controlled by the demon blood. He would be used by the Devil Emperor for the rest of his life. What a sinister method. Chu Fengmian was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. The Demon Emperor had indeed inherited the inheritance of the 6 paths demon gate. He had even inherited all of the 6 paths demon gate's vicious moves. If Chu Fengmian hadn't noticed the abnormality of the Devil Emperor, he wouldn't have examined the sword Dao totem so carefully. If he wasn't careful, he might really fall into the Devil Emperor's trap. At that time, even if Chu Fengmian had the ability to overturn the heavens, he wouldn't be able to reverse the situation. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian was cautious enough to resolve the crisis. You dare to plot against me? Very well. I'm afraid that even in your dreams, the Devil Emperor would never have imagined that I would be able to see through everything. Ordinary people wouldn't have any good methods to deal with this devil blood. However, for me, as long as the devil blood hasn't fused into my bloodline, dealing with it is an easy task. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. Since the Devil Emperor wanted to use the devil blood to deal with Chu Fengmian might as well play along and use the devil blood to deal with the Devil Emperor. Chu Fengmian, let him go. The Demon Emperor looked at Chu Fengmian's silence and deliberately pretended to be impatient as he urged. Although he did not believe that Chu Fengmian could see the demonic blood of the sword Dao totem, it was extremely dangerous to let Chu Fengmian continue probing. All right, let him go. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a sinister smile. Since you're so heartless, then don't blame me for being unjust. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian sent a palm strike towards the human devil sovereign. The speed at which the human devil sovereign's blood essence was extracted suddenly increased. In an instant, a large amount of blood essence was absorbed by Chu Fengmian. 99% of the human devil sovereign's blood essence was extracted in an instant. The remaining blood essence was only enough to sustain the human devil sovereign's life. Human devil sovereign, I'll return him to you. Chu Fengmian raised the human devil sovereign and threw him out of the stage. The human devil sovereign's body was thrown out of the stage. Several disciples of the Six Paths Devil Gate hastily rushed forward and caught the human devil sovereign, bringing him before the demon emperor. 99% of the human devil sovereign's blood essence was extracted by Chu Fengmian. Right now, he was only in the divine force realm. From an emperor, he had fallen to a divine force realm saint. Ruthless, how ruthless. To think that the human demon exalt would end up with his blood essence being extracted. If it wasn't for the demon emperor, the human devil sovereign would have already fallen. This Chu Fengmian's character is too arrogant. Could it be that he wants to offend all the sects of the 9 regions? He doesn't even put the 7 great sects in his eyes. Naturally, he won't put the Six Paths Devil Gate in his eyes. With such an arrogant character, I'm afraid he won't be able to go far. Forget it. No matter what, let's not provoke this fierce person. Otherwise, he'll go crazy. The cultivators on the spectators stand shuddered at the sight of the human devil sovereign. Chu Fengmian was truly ruthless. Although he said he would release the human devil sovereign, he still extracted 99% of the human devil sovereign's blood essence. This was no different from crippling the human demon supremacy. It seemed like Chu Fengmian was truly fearless. Even if it was the Six Paths Devil Gate, Chu Fengmian had no fear. Humph! The demon emperor snorted on purpose after checking the human devil sovereign's condition. However, he waved his hand and signaled the disciples of the Six Paths Devil Gate to take the human devil sovereign away. The human devil sovereign could recover after having his blood essence extracted. As long as there were enough resources, he could recover. The Six Paths Devil Gate could afford such resources. Chu Fengmian's figure slowly descended from the arena. Naturally, Chu Fengmian had won this battle. Jian Zhanxian, Huang Wu, and the others looked at Chu Fengmian with sneers. Chu Fengmian's character was too arrogant. In their opinion, it would have been a win-win situation if they had agreed to the demon emperor's request. However, Chu Fengmian had shed all pretense of cordiality with the Six Paths Devil Gate for the sake of the Sword Dao Totem. He had even extracted the human devil sovereign's blood essence. Chu Fengmian and the Six Paths Devil Gate had resolved their irreconcilable enmity. They were all waiting to watch the show. They were looking forward to the next battle where Chu Fengmian would encounter the Six Paths Devil Gate or even the Demon Emperor. If they fought, they would reap the benefits. Especially when they saw the Demon Emperor walking towards Chu Fengmian, the smiles on their faces deepened. Chu Fengmian, the human devil seed belongs to the Six Paths Devil Gate. Return it. The Demon Emperor suddenly walked towards Chu Fengmian and extended his hand. Chapter 977. The human demon seed represented the inheritance of the human demons sect of the 6 demon sects. It could be said that the 6 demon sects' inheritance was all thanks to the 6 demon seeds of the 6 demon sects. It might not be useful to others, but it meant a lot to the 6 demon sects. Oh? Give it back to you? I didn't promise you that. I'll give it back to you. Chu Fengmian looked at the demon emperor and sneered. You want to exchange it for the human demon seed? I won't go overboard. Give me another sword path totem and I'll give you the human demon seed. How about that? Another sword path totem? The demon emperor's face twitched when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. What did Chu Fengmian take the sword path totem for? The 6 demon sects had obtained the sword path totem for countless years, and it was now in Chu Fengmian's hands. How could they give him a second sword path totem? You've already obtained a sword path totem. Don't be greedy. The human demon seed is meaningless in your hands. The demon emperor looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. Obviously, he couldn't agree to Chu Fengmian's request this time. Not to mention the 6 demon sects, they couldn't give him another sword path totem. Even if they couldn't let Chu Fengmian ask for it at will. Is that so? Then I'll keep the human demon seed for myself. I'll just throw it away when I'm bored. You can look for it in the 9 regions. Maybe you can find it in the stomach of that demonic beast. Chu Fengmian said casually. Get out of the way. The Demon Emperor's face turned green and red at Chu Fengmian's words, but he still stepped aside. Since the Sword Dao Totem was already in Chu Fengmian's hands, he wouldn't be able to resist the urge to comprehend it. Once the demonic blood entered his body, it would be the time of his death. There was no need for more conflicts now. With that, the Demon Emperor returned to the 6 demon sects' seats. Chu Fengmian also returned to his seat and watched the battle in front of him. At this moment, the remaining martial artists were almost all rulers of the Destiny realm. Only Chu Fengmian, the Devil Emperor, and a few other great ancestors could do so. However, whether it was Chu Fengmian or the Devil Emperor, they were all figures in the ruler's land. No martial artist would regard Chu Fengmian as an ordinary ruler. After all, Chu Fengmian was someone who could kill even a supreme realm human demon sovereign. The battles also became more and more intense. Gu Jin had already been defeated. She had entered the top 100 of the 9 regions genius battle. He was one of the few great ancestors of the Barren Ancient sect, and in the end, he was defeated by an emperor of the Barren Ancient sect. The emperor of the Desolate Ancient sect had intended to kill Gu Jin. However, Chu Fengmian had long known about this and had left a trace of spiritual energy on Gu Jin, allowing her to escape unscathed. Once one took the initiative to admit defeat, one's opponent would no longer be able to attack. Gu Jin had already achieved his objective by retreating unscathed. The rest would depend on Chu Fengmian, Mod, Jian Zhanxian, Huang Wu, and the others to see who would win the championship. The battle between the two sovereigns ended quickly. When the next opponent appeared in the ancient fighting arena, the entire place suddenly went into an uproar. Waves of excited voices were heard. Jian Zhanxian of the Tianjian sect versus Yama Mo of the 6 Paths demonic sect. When they saw these two names, the battle that had been silent suddenly boiled over. Finally, it was Jian Zhanxian's turn. Jian Zhanxian's opponent was Yama Mo of the 9 regions demonic sect. Both of them had been looking down on others since the beginning. They had fought their way to this stage with an invincible posture. Kill him. Mod looked at Yama Mo of the 9 regions demonic sect and said coldly. Yes. Yama Mo of the 9 regions demonic sect stepped into the arena. Jian Zhanxian was already waiting. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. Without saying anything else, they suddenly attacked. Saber light and sword shadows collided countless times in the arena. Yama Mo of the 9 regions demonic sect's weapon was a long saber. His blade was extremely sharp. With a slash, the surrounding space turned into a blade domain. It was filled with countless saber lights. Jian Zhanxian's sword Dao didn't need any explanation. He was recognized as the best among the younger generation of the 9 regions demonic sect. Even in some sword Dao sects, the sword Dao of their ancestors might be inferior to Jian Zhanxian's. However, Yama Mo of the 9 regions demonic sect's saber was not inferior to Jian Zhanxian's. The two of them were locked in a fierce battle in the arena. What a mysterious saber technique. How can Yama Mo of the 9 regions demonic sect's saber technique be so amazing? Look, isn't this the saber technique of the legendary saber saint? The cultivators in the stands looked at Yama Mo of the 9 regions demonic sect. When they saw Yama Mo of the 9 regions demonic sect's saber technique, they suddenly exclaimed. The saber saint had once stood at the peak of the 9 regions demonic sect. However, it was said that the saber saint's saber technique had not been passed down. About 10,000 years ago, the 9 regions demonic sect's saber technique had been lost. They didn't expect Yama Mo of the 9 regions demonic sect's saber technique to reappear. The descendant of the saber saint. Yama Mo of the saber saint is actually a descendant of the saber saint. I didn't expect the descendant of the saber saint to have joined the 6 Paths demonic sect. Countless voices of discussion were filled with excitement. Sure enough, there were surprises in every 9 regions genius tournament. This time, the descendant of the saber saint, who had disappeared for 10,000 years, had actually reappeared. This saber technique is indeed amazing. Chu Fengmian nodded inwardly when he saw Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect's saber technique. Chu Fengmian didn't understand saber techniques, but sabers and swords had one thing in common: their sharpness. Judging from the sharpness of Yamamo's saber technique, Chu Fengmian knew that Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect's saber technique had reached the peak of perfection. Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect's saber technique was many times more powerful than any of the geniuses Chu Fengmian had ever seen. However, his opponent, Jian Zhanxian, was much more terrifying than Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect's saber technique. Chu Fengmian could clearly sense that Jian Zhanxian hadn't used his full strength yet. Demonic saber descends. After countless stalemates, Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect made the first move and revealed his true strength. The blade in his hand suddenly rose steadily and reached a length of tens of thousands of feet. When the blade fell, there was no way for his opponent to escape. He finally couldn't hold it in any longer. I didn't expect Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect to possess such terrifying strength. The Six Paths' demonic sect's strength is indeed terrifying. Many cultivators sighed inwardly when they saw Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect and Jian Zhanxian locked in battle. This was the first time Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect had participated in a competition. He was younger than Jian Zhanxian, yet he was already so powerful. If he was given twice the time, perhaps even Jian Zhanxian wouldn't be his match. It was indeed amazing. Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw that Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect wasn't defending. Chapter 978. The atmosphere in the crowd became more and more solemn as they looked at the arena without any expectations. It had been 30 years since Jian Zhanxian last made a move. In these 30 years, no one could imagine how strong Jian Zhanxian had become. Limitless heavenly sword. Jian Zhanxian spat out these words coldly. The sword in his hand suddenly moved. He struck out with his sword, and shadows filled the sky. It was as if there was an illusory figure rushing down with a spiritual sword in his hand, slashing and slashing. The sword had the power to break heaven and earth. Some weaker warriors could not even see this illusory figure clearly. Only some sovereigns could see it slightly. This illusory figure was actually Jian Zhanxian, and Jian Zhanxian, who was standing in the same place, was just an illusory figure that had yet to disappear. The moment Jian Zhanxian's body came in front of the blade, his sword soared into the sky and pierced the clouds. It seemed like an ordinary sword, but it pierced the clouds. The blade that Yama Supremacy had struck out was split open by the sword from the heart. Then, the sword light sprinted for a full 10,000 feet. Under the sword, Yama Supremacy's blade was completely shattered. I admit defeat. Seeing this scene, Yama Supremacy hurriedly shouted. A wave of spiritual energy appeared from the ancient fighting arena, directly ending the battle between the two. Jian Zhanxian had won. This result did not seem to have much suspense. Most of the warriors present had guessed that Jian Zhanxian would win. However, the result of a single sword victory was indeed somewhat unexpected. Yama Supremacy's strength was already extremely shocking, but he did not expect that he would still be unable to withstand a single move from Jian Zhanxian. Sword-slaying Immortal's current strength was much stronger than 30 years ago. It had already undergone an earth-shattering change. Yama Supremacy's taking the initiative to admit defeat was actually the best choice. As a saber cultivator, once his blade was broken, he did not have much fighting ability. If he continued to fight with Jian Zhanxian, he was already close to death. If he took the initiative to admit defeat, he could still save his life. When High Lord Yama stepped down, the Devil Emperor did not say anything. He only nodded. The strength that Jian Zhanxian had displayed was indeed not something that the current Hell Demon Supremacy could deal with. Jian Zhanxian's true enemy should be the Devil Emperor. However, when Jian Zhanxian stepped off the stage, he deliberately glanced at Chu Fengmian with a provocative look in his eyes. It seemed that Jian Zhanxian was still brooding over the fact that Chu Fengmian had stolen the Kendo totem from the Tianjin sect. Now, he was looking forward to drawing Chu Fengmian so that he could kill him in the arena. Despite Jian Zhanxian's provocation, Chu Fengmian's expression remained as calm as ever. At this time, most of the cultivators were still observing the battles in the arena, calculating their next opponent. Chu Fengmian was extremely calm. Chu Fengmian's goal wasn't to enter the top 10. His goal was to be number one in the 9 regions genius battle. Other than being number 1, Chu Fengmian didn't need to compete for anything else. If he wanted to be number 1, he naturally had to defeat all the other powerhouses. Instead of scheming, it was better to rely on his own strength. As long as he was strong enough, all schemes would be meaningless. Chu Fengmian sat on the ground and slowly took out the kendo totem that he had just obtained from the Devil Emperor. Chu Fengmian slowly closed his eyes and began to comprehend the kendo totem with his spiritual consciousness. His spiritual consciousness merged with the kendo totem. Good. This kid really can't help but comprehend the kendo totem. It seems that he really wants to be number 1. That's why he's in such a hurry to increase his strength. The Devil Emperor's eyes turned cold as he watched Chu Fengmian begin to comprehend the kendo totem. Since Chu Fengmian had chosen to comprehend the kendo totem, it meant that he hadn't seen the demon blood hidden in the kendo totem. The Devil Emperor took advantage of this time to inject the demon blood into Chu Fengmian's body. When he fought with Chu Fengmian, this drop of demon blood would be enough to erupt with earth-shattering power and reverse the situation. The Devil Emperor had quietly controlled the demon blood in the kendo totem and slowly injected it into Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian sat on the ground. He had seen all of the Devil Emperor's actions. Chu Fengmian was just pretending to comprehend the kendo totem. In fact, he was waiting for the Devil Emperor to start transferring the demon blood from the kendo totem to Chu Fengmian. This drop of demon blood gradually moved from the kendo totem to Chu Fengmian's body. It wanted to directly drill into Chu Fengmian's spirit meridian. However, all of a sudden, a surge of spiritual energy appeared and wrapped around the drop of demonic blood. It was the power of creation. This demon blood wasn't ordinary demon blood. It was the purgatory demon blood that had been specially refined. It was said that nothing could dissolve it. However, in front of the power of creation, there was nothing that couldn't be used. The purgatory demon blood was the same. It was wrapped up by the power of creation and then integrated into the spirit meridian. Now that the demon blood was destroyed, the Devil Emperor would definitely know. Chu Fengmian didn't want to act rashly and alert the enemy. He wanted to leave a surprise for the Devil Emperor. The power of creation surrounded the demon blood and entered the spirit meridian. The Devil Emperor could only feel that the demon blood seemed to have entered Chu Fengmian's spirit meridian. As long as he controlled it, the demon blood would act up and completely control Chu Fengmian. After doing all this, the Devil Emperor's face revealed a somewhat sinister smile. Chu Fengmian had killed 2 supremacies of the 6-path demon sect in a row. How could the Devil Emperor let Chu Fengmian go? However, the Devil Emperor didn't know that as long as Chu Fengmian was willing, the power of creation could directly eliminate the demon blood. The demon blood could be eliminated. This sword principle totem did not pose any danger to him. Chu Fengmian then started to activate his spiritual consciousness and comprehend the kendo totem. The number of swordsmanship recorded in this kendo totem was 10 times more than that of the previous kendo totem. If he wanted to comprehend it, it would be more difficult to understand. Originally, Chu Fengmian would need a lot of effort to comprehend it. However, when Chu Fengmian comprehended the unknown swordsmanship, he seemed to have vaguely reached a new level of understanding of swordsmanship. This obscure swordsmanship was seen through by Chu Fengmian at a glance. In just 2 hours, Chu Fengmian had learned more than half of the swordsmanship in this kendo totem. He only needed to practice it over and over again to integrate it into the 9-region swordsmanship. This speed was simply beyond Chu Fengmian's imagination. Chapter 979. Although the unknown swordsmanship was incomplete, the benefits it brought to Chu Fengmian were incomparable. Chu Fengmian originally needed at least a few days to fully comprehend the sword principle totem. Now, he only needed 2 hours to do it. This meant that Chu Fengmian's understanding of swordsmanship had undergone earth-shaking changes. The ancient swordsmanship recorded in the sword principle totem was not what Chu Fengmian was looking forward to the most. What Chu Fengmian was looking forward to the most was the incomplete swordsmanship. Chu Fengmian also wanted to see if there was any incomplete swordsmanship in this sword principle totem. This was what Chu Fengmian was looking forward to the most. Chu Fengmian closed his eyes tightly and carefully explored every corner of this sword principle totem. Chu Fengmian had just discovered this unknown swordsmanship after careful exploration for a long time. Another 6 hours passed. Finally, Chu Fengmian found some traces. Then, he found another incomplete swordsmanship in this sword principle totem. It was the same as the unknown swordsmanship that Chu Fengmian had obtained before. They belonged to the same swordsmanship. Sure enough, my guess is right. Chu Fengmian was overjoyed. For Chu Fengmian, this unknown swordsmanship was the most important thing. He had previously guessed that this unknown swordsmanship was in the sword principle totem. Now, he also found this unknown swordsmanship in this sword principle totem. This confirmed Chu Fengmian's guess. This unknown swordsmanship was indeed hidden in the sword principle totem. Chu Fengmian also found this unknown swordsmanship in the sword principle totem that ranked 4th. It was also an incomplete part. However, to Chu Fengmian's great joy, this unknown swordsmanship was actually connected with the part that Chu Fengmian had obtained before. It was enough to complete this part of the unknown swordsmanship. Although only a small part of it was completed, it brought Chu Fengmian a great harvest. Just this part of the swordsmanship was enough to make Chu Fengmian's swordsmanship reach a new and incredible level. Chu Fengmian felt that his 9-region swordsmanship had begun to change. Although the swordsmanship was incomplete, it was much more profound than any swordsmanship Chu Fengmian had ever seen. Just by comprehending the swordsmanship, Chu Fengmian suddenly felt that his strength was rising and was about to reach a bottleneck. He was only 1 step away from the 6th step of the life and death steps. Chu Fengmian had comprehended countless sword techniques, but he had never reached such a level. Now that he had comprehended the remnant of an unknown sword technique, Chu Fengmian almost made a breakthrough in his realm. Chu Fengmian's improvement in his realm was not the greatest benefit. He could feel that his understanding of swordsmanship had improved by leaps and bounds. If Chu Fengmian were to comprehend the sword principle totem now, Chu Fengmian might be able to comprehend all the swordsmanship in the sword principle totem in less than 10 minutes. This kid's swordsmanship seems to have made a breakthrough again. The martial artists at the edge of the arena all looked at Chu Fengmian and thought to themselves. After Chu Fengmian comprehended the sword principle totem, everyone could clearly feel that Chu Fengmian's strength had reached a higher level than before. Many experts of the 7 great sects looked at Chu Fengmian and made up their minds. If they encountered Chu Fengmian, they had to kill him. They couldn't give him the slightest chance. Only Demon Emperor sneered when he saw Chu Fengmian's strength increase. The stronger Chu Fengmian was, the better it was for him. His demon blood had already merged with Chu Fengmian's body. He just had to wait for Chu Fengmian to be forced into a desperate situation. Then, he would be able to urge the demon blood to occupy Chu Fengmian's body. At that time, Chu Fengmian could only become his slave and work for him. The stronger Chu Fengmian was, the better it was for Demon Emperor. The battle continued. There were only a dozen martial artists left in this year's 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Chu Fengmian slowly opened his eyes and saw Demon Emperor fighting with the young master of the Sage Monarch sect, Wu Hongtian. With Wu Hongtian's strength, he was a hot favorite to win this year's 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Since the Sage Monarch sect was not active in the region, Wu Hongtian's reputation was not great. However, as the young master of the Sage Monarch sect, the martial artists in the stands knew that such a person was not weak. At the very least, he was someone who was on par with Jian Zhanxian and Desolate Void. Therefore, everyone was looking forward to this battle. Demon Emperor, you betrayed the 7 great sects and killed many of our disciples. Today, I will represent the 7 great sects to kill you, you demon. Wu Hongtian looked at Chu Fengmian and roared furiously. Along with his anger, Wu Hongtian's body began to swell crazily as he activated his martial god true body. Facing Demon Emperor, Wu Hongtian naturally did not hold back. The moment the martial god true body was formed, Wu Hongtian's true strength was displayed. Zenith Realm. Wu Hongtian's cultivation realm had reached the Zenith Realm. With the support of the martial god true body, his strength was almost invincible, except for old ancestor Wu Shuang. When Wu Hongtian's martial god true body appeared, he immediately gathered the strength of a punch and blasted it towards Demon Emperor. On the other hand, MOD watched everything with cold eyes. He waited until Wu Hongtian made his move before he slowly made his move. Endless demonic intent was emitted from his body and surrounded Demon Emperor. The demonic intent turned into ancient demonic gods. They looked fierce and evil, but they all submitted to Demon Emperor. It was as if Demon Emperor was the real emperor of demons. Wu Hongtian's punch was blocked by an ancient demonic god. It could not even get close to Demon Emperor. This demonic intent is really terrifying. The ancient demonic gods formed by the demonic intent are comparable to the Zenith Realm. Chu Fengmian was shocked when he saw Demon Emperor make his move. The last time he fought with Chu Fengmian, Demon Emperor's strength was many times stronger. His demonic will was enough to stand on equal footing with a Paramount Heaven stage expert. Moreover, Chu Fengmian could vaguely see that Demon Emperor was only a clone. A clone that was not inferior to his strength. It was exactly the same as when he fought with Chu Fengmian in Heavenly Feather Deity Domain. Demon Emperor's true body was hidden somewhere. Chapter 980. The Demon Emperor's clones were almost as strong as his original body. No cultivation technique in the 9 zones could achieve such a feat. Chu Fengmian had never heard of such a monstrous cultivation technique even in the 6 Paths Demon sect. Since it wasn't a cultivation technique, it must have been born innately. Chu Fengmian knew that among the countless celestial divine bodies, there was a special body called the Nirvana Divine Body. The Nirvana Divine Body was ranked 3rd among the countless innate divine bodies. In terms of mystery, it could be said to be the top divine body. Legend had it that martial artists with the Nirvana Divine Body could be reborn through Nirvana. Every time they died, they would give birth to a clone. There were a total of 9 chances to create 9 clones that were as strong as the original body. Of course, this was the Nirvana Divine Body. Most martial artists couldn't reach this level, but it was enough to create 3 to 4 clones. Chu Fengmian guessed that the Demon Emperor must have the Nirvana Divine Body among the innate divine bodies to be able to create such terrifying clones. However, he didn't know how many clones the Demon Emperor had. 1 clone was already so difficult to deal with. If he could reach the Nirvana Divine Body and create 9 clones, his combat strength would be 10 times stronger. He would be on par with old ancestor Wu. Wu Hongtian, do you think you are a match for me? Do you think you can kill me? What a joke. Die. I will take first place this time. Whoever dares to go against me will die. Suddenly, the Demon Emperor roared coldly. Dozens of ancient demon gods appeared beside him and attacked Wu Hongtian at the same time. These ancient demon gods attacked at the same time, which was equivalent to dozens of Paramount Realm martial artists joining forces. Even though they were slightly inferior to true Utmost Heaven Realm cultivators, when dozens of primordial demon gods attacked together, they were still unstoppable. Martial God breaks the sky. Wu Hongtian roared crazily. He didn't retreat in the face of dozens of ancient demon gods. The Sage Ruler's sect had inherited the purest martial god path. They wouldn't retreat even in the face of strong enemies. Facing the countless primordial demon gods, Wu Hongtian reached out his hand and grabbed one of them. With his strength, he tore the primordial demon god apart. In one move, he tore an ancient demon god that was close to Paramount Realm apart. Bang! 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 Another 3 consecutive punches were thrown out. The few primordial demon gods that were approaching Wu Hongtian were killed on the spot. All right. The disciples of the Sage Monarch sect cheered loudly. Wu Hongtian was getting more and more courageous as he fought. After killing a few primordial demon gods, the martial god's real body behind him grew larger and larger. It was as if a true martial god had been reborn. Demon Emperor, is this all you've got? Wu Hongtian threw out another punch and killed the last primordial demon god. His face was filled with pride after he killed the last primordial demon. Die! Wu Hongtian took a step forward and arrived in front of MOD. Then, he threw a punch at MOD. The ancient demon gods guarding the Demon Emperor had all been killed by Wu Hongtian. None of them could withstand Wu Hongtian's punch. Could it be that the Devil Emperor is going to lose? The ancient demon gods by the Demon Emperor's side have all been killed. There's no way to resist. The Demon Emperor is only at the God Chi layer. Without those ancient demon gods, he probably doesn't have much strength left. Many people looked at the Demon Emperor. Throughout the Demon Emperor's battles, the ancient demon gods by his side had killed his opponents. As for his real body, he had never fought before. Hence, many people guessed that the Demon Emperor's real body did not have much strength left. After all, the Demon Emperor was only an ancestor at the God Chi layer. He was not even an emperor. Most of the people guessed that the Demon Emperor was going to lose. You don't know your place. Seeing Wu Hongtian rushing towards him, the Demon Emperor's lips curled into a disdainful smile. Boom! The Demon Emperor raised his hand slowly. Then, he threw a punch at Wu Hongtian. The punch was thrown in the air. In the air, there were thousands of martial techniques. They were densely packed and formed the punch. Then, they collided with Wu Hongtian's punch. Boom! A loud explosion came from the fighting ring. The Demon Emperor's punch had completely blocked Wu Hongtian's punch. Even Wu Hongtian's body was pushed back a few hundred miles. Then, he slowly came to a stop. Wu Hongtian's face turned ugly. Several cracks appeared on the martial god's real body behind him. Those martial artists who had guessed that the Demon Emperor was going to lose were dumbfounded when they saw this. They did not expect the Demon Emperor to have hidden such terrifying strength. The power of his punch was comparable to Wu Hongtian's. It was enough to push Wu Hongtian back. Even Wu Hongtian's martial god real body had a few cracks on it. What kind of power is this? Is this still a power that an ancestor can possess? Sword Immortal Slaying, Desolate, and the others couldn't hide the shock in their eyes. The Demon Emperor was very famous. However, this was the first time he had fought. No one had expected that the Demon Emperor was not only skilled in demonic techniques. His real body's strength was also extremely terrifying. He could send Wu Hongtian flying with a single punch. If it were anyone else, be it Jian Zhanxian or Huang Wu, they would not be confident that they could withstand the Demon Emperor's punch. Wu Hongtian is going to lose. Chu Fengmian was clear when he saw this. Wu Hongtian was definitely going to lose. With Wu Hongtian's strength, he was not even qualified for the Demon Emperor to display his true strength. Die! Wu Hongtian was sent flying and injured. The Demon Emperor did not intend to give Wu Hongtian any chance to catch his breath. He gathered his strength at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, another punch fell from the sky and blasted toward Wu Hongtian. Wu Hongtian was flustered. He clearly understood the Demon Emperor's strength from the punch he had just exchanged with the Demon Emperor. If he received another punch, he would definitely die. Swoosh! Wu Hongtian's body quickly turned into a ray of light and flew away. However, the speed of the punch was much faster than Wu Hongtian's. In the next moment, it locked onto Wu Hongtian's body and fell from the sky. Crack! A crisp sound was heard. The martial god's real body behind Wu Hongtian shattered on the spot. In the next moment, his body was crushed by the punch. Only a cloud of blood was left in the sky. Wu Hongtian was dead. Chapter 981. Wu Hongtian had fallen. Looking at the bloody mist in the arena, the martial artists in the stands felt their hearts go numb. Wu Hongtian was the young master of the Sage King sect. He was the most outstanding and well-groomed genius of his generation. His strength was enough to compete with Jian Zhanxian and Desolate Wu for the top spot. But right now, in the hands of the Demon Emperor, he was killed just like that. In the stands, the faces of the Sage King sect's disciples were extremely gloomy. Even Ancestor Wu's eyes were filled with resentment. The most promising disciple of the Sage King sect had been killed by the Demon Emperor. The hatred between the Sage King sect and the Demon Emperor was irreconcilable. Sensing the hatred of the Sage King sect's disciples, the Demon Emperor was indifferent. He was destined to rule the world and stand at the top of the 9 regions. Anyone who went against him would have to die. The 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone had sealed his fate. However, when the Demon Emperor walked down from the arena, he deliberately looked at Chu Fengmian. He was confused. The legend of the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone had only appeared once in every era. But this time, there were 2. Chu Fengmian also reached the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone. This was beyond the legends. However, the Demon Emperor soon withdrew his gaze. In any case, Chu Fengmian's body was already half dead after being poisoned by his demon blood. There was no need for him to worry about it. The Demon Emperor turned his head and returned to the area where the 6 Paths Demon Gate was and waited quietly. It seemed that the Demon Emperor did not know what was going on. Chu Fengmian sighed in his heart. The legend of the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone, according to what Chu Fengmian read in the ancient books, should be true. In every era, only one genius would be chosen by the heaven. After all, he would rule the world in the future. The genius of this era should be the Demon Emperor. However, Chu Fengmian's reincarnation was an anomaly. There had never been anyone who had reincarnated in the City of History. Chu Fengmian's reincarnation was already heaven-defying. So, it was not impossible for 2 martial artists to reach the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone in this era. So what if the Demon Emperor was a genius with great luck? Chu Fengmian returned in defiance of the heavens. Of course, what he wanted to do was to break everything. Even the Demon Emperor, a genius at the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone, would be trampled under Chu Fengmian's feet. I wonder who is stronger between the Demon Emperor and Chu Fengmian. Both of them are at the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone. They are both monsters. From the looks of it, it should be the Devil Emperor who is stronger. Chu Fengmian has yet to encounter a true genius. However, I've heard that Jian Zhanxian is no longer what he used to be. Look at his strength. The last time he fought, he became many times stronger. This year's 9 Regions Genius Battle is truly unpredictable until the very last moment. Amazing, truly amazing. Whoever becomes the champion will be the strongest of the younger generation of the 9 zones. This year's 9 Regions Genius Tournament was the most exciting one since the ancient era. However, if a person like Wu Hongtian was placed in the previous 9 Regions Genius Tournament, even if he didn't win the championship, he would at least be able to place in the top 3. But now, he had been killed by the Demon Emperor on the spot. This was enough to prove how dangerous this 9 Regions Genius Tournament was. The battle between the Demon Emperor and Wu Hongtian had ended. The next battle had begun. Chu Fengmian's name once again appeared in the ancient gladiator arena. Chu Fengmian's opponent was Gongsun Tianjue of the ancient Moon Canyon. My opponent this round is actually him? Chu Fengmian took a step forward and entered the ancient gladiator arena. Opposite him was the Heaven's End Divine Body, Gongsun Tianjue. Gongsun Tianjue didn't suppress the power of his Heaven's End Divine Body in the slightest. He released it completely. As expected, it's the Heaven's End Divine Body. Standing opposite Gongsun Tianjue, Chu Fengmian could clearly feel the power of the Heaven's End Divine Body. The space around Gongsun Tianjue began to shatter and condense. This was the power of the Heaven's End Divine Body. The Heaven's End Divine Body was more like a curse. As long as one was around Gongsun Tianjue, they would be destroyed. Therefore, Gongsun Tianjue had to completely suppress the power of the heavens and divine body outside. Only in the ancient gladiator arena could he unleash it without any restraint. Did you kill Gongsun Fu? Gongsun Tianjue suddenly asked Chu Fengmian. Oh? Gongsun Fu? Hearing Gongsun Tianjue suddenly mention this name, Chu Fengmian recalled. Wasn't Gongsun Fu the guy who tried to kill the Yi siblings, but was killed by Chu Fengmian? That's right, I killed him. Chu Fengmian said indifferently. As long as it was Chu Fengmian who killed someone, he naturally wouldn't deny it. Gongsun Fu is my younger brother. How dare you kill him? Very well, I won't kill you today, but I will cripple your cultivation and bring you to my brother's grave so that you will kneel and repent. Gongsun Tianjue's voice was cold, and there was no anger in his eyes as he looked at Chu Fengmian. As soon as he finished speaking, Gongsun Tianjue attacked. Heaven's End, Earth's End. The power of the heavens and divine body gathered in Gongsun Tianjue's palm and blasted toward Chu Fengmian. The space it came into contact with was shattered by the power of the heavens and divine body. This was the power of the heavens end, the power to shatter everything. You want to cripple my cultivation? Let's see if you have the ability to do so. Since Gongsun Fu is your younger brother, I will kill you today and let you accompany him. Chu Fengmian laughed, and his sword intent condensed into a spiritual sword from his hand. Holding the spiritual sword in his hand, he met the attack head-on. The spiritual sword flashed as he struck out several sword techniques in succession. Skybane's sword technique, extermination sword technique, divine wind sword technique, mediocre sword technique, and so on. In an instant, Chu Fengmian struck out dozens of sword techniques, all of which were the sword techniques that Chu Fengmian had comprehended from the sword principle totem land. Now was the best time for him to practice his sword techniques against Gongsun Tianjue. He naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity to practice his sword techniques. Although he wasn't familiar with the dozens of sword techniques, they were enough to block Gongsun Tianjue's palm. Under the impact of the dozens of sword techniques, the power of his palm was also torn apart. At the same time, Chu Fengmian struck out with his spiritual sword again, striking out dozens of sword techniques again. Chapter 982. In less than 10 seconds, Chu Fengmian had unleashed hundreds of sword techniques. These hundreds of sword techniques were all different. They danced in the air and slashed at Gongsun Tianjue. What is Chu Fengmian trying to do? Is he wasting his spiritual energy like this? No matter how strong his spiritual energy is, he can't afford to waste it like this. Unleashing hundreds of sword techniques at the same time? What is he doing? These hundreds of sword techniques aren't coordinated in any way. Although there are many of them, they aren't strong. Is he trying to kill Gongsun Tianjue with sword techniques? The martial artists in the stands couldn't understand Chu Fengmian's actions. In a battle between martial artists, every move required the use of spiritual energy. Therefore, no matter how strong a martial artist was, he would conserve his spiritual energy. At least, it was impossible for him to unleash hundreds of sword techniques in a row. It was simply a waste of his spiritual energy. Gongsun Tianjue sneered inwardly at Chu Fengmian's actions. Such a waste of spiritual power and hundreds of sword techniques. If it were some martial artists with little combat experience, they might panic and give Chu Fengmian an opportunity to kill them in one strike. However, for someone like Gongsun Tianjue who had experienced countless battles of life and death, these hundreds of sword techniques posed no threat to him. Break! Gongsun Tianjue condensed his spiritual energy into a long saber. He slashed out and destroyed the hundreds of sword techniques at the same time. However, as soon as the hundreds of sword techniques were destroyed, Chu Fengmian unleashed hundreds of sword techniques at Gongsun Tianjue again. It seemed that he didn't want Gongsun Tianjue to make a move and kept suppressing him. However, Gongsun Tianjue wasn't afraid at all. He still held his long saber and broke all the sword techniques that came at him. These uncoordinated sword techniques couldn't threaten him at all. What is Chu Fengmian trying to do? Does he want to suppress Gongsun Tianjue and keep him from making a move? But if he continues to consume his spiritual energy like this, he will soon run out of spiritual energy. Huang Wushuang and the others around the arena looked at Chu Fengmian with puzzlement. Suppressing Gongsun Qinjue was indeed enough to seize the initiative. In a battle of this level, seizing the initiative was indeed a very important thing. But if Gongsun Qinjue didn't reveal any flaws in the end, Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy would be exhausted. Maybe this kid thinks he's no match for me, so he's trying to gain the upper hand so that he won't be defeated too pathetically. A sovereign of the Tianjian sect said disdainfully. Chu Fengmian had made the Tianjian sect suffer such a great loss. Now, he was hoping that Chu Fengmian would lose quickly, or even die at Gongsun Tianjue's hands. I'm afraid it's not that simple. The sword Immortal Slaying Sword shook his head and said. He didn't understand what Chu Fengmian was trying to do. However, he knew very well that Chu Fengmian was definitely not an ordinary person since he was able to grow to such a level. In the arena, Chu Fengmian was still performing countless sword techniques. No matter how Gongsun Qinjue resisted, Chu Fengmian didn't stop at all. This scene lasted for a full hour. During this hour, Gongsun Qinjue could only use his spiritual energy to resist. However, Gongsun Qinjue consumed far less spiritual energy than Chu Fengmian. Kid, don't waste your energy. It's useless. All your attacks are useless against me. Gongsun Qinjue looked at Chu Fengmian with a mocking smile. Even he wouldn't be able to hold on for an hour under such continuous attacks. Moreover, Chu Fengmian was only in the god martial realm. How could his spiritual energy be comparable to an emperor's? If he held on for a while longer, Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy would be exhausted. At that time, he would have to admit defeat. However, Gongsun Qinjue wouldn't give Chu Fengmian the chance to admit defeat. He could do a lot of things in the time it took. Gongsun Qinjue's eyes flickered. He was already thinking about how to torture Chu Fengmian. After all, Chu Fengmian had killed his younger brother. Their hatred was irreconcilable. Killing Chu Fengmian would be too easy for him. He would have countless ways to deal with Chu Fengmian. If you continue, your spiritual energy will be exhausted. Don't waste your energy struggling. Just admit defeat. If you admit defeat now, I'll leave your corpse intact. It won't be so ugly. Gongsun Qinjue's voice came. Is that so? Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a sarcastic smile. Gongsun Qinjue hadn't counterattacked because he wanted to exhaust Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy. How could Chu Fengmian not know this? However, this was the last thing Chu Fengmian was afraid of. He had a divine pulse and endless spiritual energy. Even in the ancient arena, Chu Fengmian could absorb spiritual energy to replenish his spiritual energy. His spiritual power was limitless. Since Gongsun Qinjue wanted to resist, Chu Fengmian would let him resist as much as he could. It would be enough for Chu Fengmian to practice his sword techniques over and over again. Such a good opportunity was rare. Whoosh! 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 Chu Fengmian's sword suddenly sped up. The speed of the countless sword techniques increased countless times. The number of sword techniques increased by 4 or 5 times. Thousands of sword techniques struck at Gongsun Qinjue at the same time. He's going all out? Chu Fengmian knows he's no match for Gongsun Qinjue, so he's going to make a last stand? The martial artists in the stands all had the same thought. Chu Fengmian's move was very much like a last stand before he ran out of spiritual energy. Not only the spectators, but Gongsun Qinjue also had the same thought. As long as he can withstand this wave, he'll definitely run out of spiritual energy and admit defeat. When that happens, I'll capture him and suppress him. Then, I'll take revenge on him. Gongsun Qinjue's eyes flickered, and his lips curled into a cold smile. He gathered his spiritual energy and formed it into a scimitar. A dazzling blade soared into the sky. Then, the sword techniques in the sky collided. Boom! 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 The sword techniques in the sky collided with the scimitar and disappeared at the same time. Good. Now, Gongsun Tianjue's eyes flickered. He looked at Chu Fengmian and was about to charge at him. Suddenly, thousands of sword techniques struck at Gongsun Tianjue at the same time. What? There's more? Chu Fengmian still has spiritual energy? Countless martial artists in the stands also thought that Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy had been depleted. However, the moment the thousands of sword techniques were blocked, Chu Fengmian's sword techniques were blocked. From Chu Fengmian's sword, thousands of swordsmanship slashed toward Gongsun Tianjue again. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a cold smile. Chapter 983. Whoosh! Thousands of swordsmanship streaked toward Gongsun Tianjue again under everyone's incredulous gazes. Gongsun Tianjue, who had just found a chance to counterattack, quickly gathered his spiritual power to block the attacks. Although the thousands of sword principles were messy and disorderly, Chu Fengmian became more and more familiar with them as he used them. It was already completely different from how it was at the beginning. Even if he didn't block it, he would definitely lose if he took it head-on. Boom! 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 Gongsun Tianjue condensed a blade and blocked the attack again. This time, his face revealed a strained expression. It was obvious that his spiritual energy was starting to run out. Although he didn't consume much spiritual power to block the sword art, he couldn't withstand Chu Fengmian's continuous bombardment of sword arts. Gongsun Tianjue had been using his spiritual power to block the attacks, especially the thousands of sword techniques. It took him a lot of effort to block them. How can Chu Fengmian's spiritual power be so strong? Jian Zhanxian, Huang Wu, and the others looked at Chu Fengmian with disdain and ridicule, but now it was all gone. It was replaced by a look of concentration. Indeed, Chu Fengmian's fighting style could be said to be extremely crazy and chaotic. However, it wasn't without power. Such strong spiritual power could suppress Gongsun Tianjue until he died, leaving him no chance to fight back. No matter how strong Gongsun Tianjue was, he couldn't take the initiative to fight back. He could only let his spiritual power be consumed. Merely, this sort of method would only be used against the weak, when toying with the weak. Who would have thought that Chu Fengmian, who was only in the god martial realm, had spiritual power that was countless times stronger than an emperor? This kid is really strange. Huang Wu curled his lips. Everyone saw Chu Fengmian in the arena clearly. He didn't stop once, let alone refine spiritual herbs to recover his spiritual power. It could be said that his spiritual energy was so strong that it was unimaginable to others. However, everyone present was a genius of the 9 regions. After knowing Chu Fengmian's secret, they had already thought of a countermeasure. They couldn't delay the fight against Chu Fengmian. If Gongsun Tianjue had ignored Chu Fengmian and attacked him directly, it would have been possible. At that time, Gongsun Tianjue still had his full strength and was in perfect condition. It wouldn't be a problem for him to take a few sword strikes head-on. By now, Gongsun Tianjue's spirit energy had been depleted by more than half. He didn't even have the chance to counterattack. They could only passively defend. Now, Gongsun Tianjue's only chance was to wait for Chu Fengmian to run out of spirit energy and counterattack. However, Chu Fengmian wouldn't give Chu Fengmian such an opportunity. In the arena, the sound of explosions gradually subsided. Gongsun Tianjue's face was no longer as proud as before after blocking the thousands of sword arts. Gongsun Tianjue's spiritual energy had been depleted by more than half, and he was especially enraged by the constant beating. When the thousands of sword arts were blocked, Gongsun Tianjue stepped forward without any hesitation and prepared to counterattack. However, just as he raised his head, thousands of sword techniques bombarded him from the sky. Continue. Chu Fengmian revealed a relaxed smile. Seeing that his thousands of sword attacks were blocked, he once again used his spiritual sword to launch thousands of sword attacks at Gongsun Tianjue. Heavens, there's more. Is Chu Fengmian's spirit energy limitless? Looking at this scene, all the warriors present were dumbfounded. Each and every one of their eyes was filled with fear. Even a supreme forefather would have run out of spirit energy by now. However, it seemed that Chu Fengmian was still at ease. He even deliberately waited for Gongsun Tianjue to finish blocking before launching another attack. How is this possible? How is this possible? Gongsun Tianjue raised his head. When he saw the thousands of sword arts descending again, he even thought that he was hallucinating. Even if there were 10 Gongsun Tianjue's combined spirit energy consumption, they would be completely drained at this rate. Yet, Chu Fengmian still had spirit energy, as if he had unlimited spirit energy. Although he did have the spirit energy of a martial artist and was stronger than ordinary people, it shouldn't be this exaggerated. He had been blocking Chu Fengmian's sword arts for so long that his spirit energy was about to be depleted, but Chu Fengmian seemed to be fine. However, before he could think about it, the sky full of sword arts had fallen again. He could only instinctively gather his spirit energy to defend himself. The power of Tianjue turned into a barrier in front of Gongsun Tianjue, blocking the bombardment of thousands of sword arts. Boom! 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 After a full minute, cracks began to appear on the barrier in front of Gongsun Tianjue. Just as the barrier was about to shatter, the thousands of sword arts gradually stopped. He blocked it. He even blocked it. Seeing Gongsun Tianjue block it again, the crowd couldn't help but exclaim. No matter how flustered Gongsun Tianjue was, he still managed to block such terrifying sword arts. At this moment, countless eyes were looking at Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian raised his spiritual sword again. Thousands of sword arts were condensed from the spiritual sword in Chu Fengmian's hand. Thousands of sword arts fell again, shattering the barrier in front of Gongsun Tianjue. Then, his body was almost devoid of spirit energy. Pierced by thousands of sword arts, he died on the spot. Tianjue. Senior brother Tianjue. The disciples of the ancient Moon Canyon shouted loudly. The chief disciple of the ancient Moon Canyon, Gongsun Tianjue with the divine physique, died in the hands of Chu Fengmian. Moreover, he was suppressed by Chu Fengmian until Gongsun Tianjue's spirit energy was exhausted. This was an outcome that no one had ever thought of. Even some martial artists thought that Chu Fengmian might win, but they didn't expect Chu Fengmian to win so easily. Chu Fengmian stood in the air in the arena, continuously attacking with sword arts, making Gongsun Tianjue block until Gongsun Tianjue couldn't resist anymore. This kind of ease was not inferior to when the Demon Emperor killed Wu Hongtian. Chu Fengmian, the ancient Moon Canyon will definitely kill you. An ancestor of the ancient Moon Canyon looked at Chu Fengmian and roared in anger. Is that so? The ancient Moon Canyon will be flattened sooner or later. Chapter 984. Hearing old ancestor Wu's threat, Chu Fengmian could only sneer. If he didn't kill Gongsun Tianjue now, would he let the tiger return to the mountain? That would be stupid. As for old ancestor Wu's threat, Chu Fengmian didn't care at all. There was no possibility of reconciliation between him and the 7 great sections. Chu Fengmian left these words and slowly walked down from the stage. Looking at Chu Fengmian's back, many warriors in the stands finally came back to their senses. This battle brought them too much shock. Gongsun Tianjue was a warrior with an innate godly body, and a heaven's chosen stone's 11th layer aptitude. But now, Gongsun Tianjue was suppressed by Chu Fengmian, and he didn't even have a chance to fight back. How strong was Chu Fengmian? This kid is indeed strange, but I'm not afraid of him. His realm has always been a hidden danger. Although his spirit power is strong, his strength is not strong. If I attack him, he'll definitely die. Huang Wu glanced at Chu Fengmian, then suddenly turned to Jian Zhanxian and said, "What about you?" "He'll die if he meets me," the sword immortal said calmly from the side. As if it was a matter of course, he was very confident. "Oh? Then let's see who kills him first." Huang Wu smiled and retracted his gaze. Gongsun Tianjue's death, this battle naturally belonged to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian returned to the edge of the stage, sat down, and slowly closed his eyes. In the battle with Gongsun Tianjue, Chu Fengmian had been using sword arts without using any other means. In fact, it was all to practice the sword arts of the Sword Dao Totem. These swordsmanship could only be integrated into the 9-region swordsmanship by Chu Fengmian when it reached the profound realm through repeated practice. Chu Fengmian didn't expect to defeat Gongsun Qianjue like this. If Gongsun Qianjue used his full strength at the beginning, he might be able to force Chu Fengmian to use some of his strength. But he chose to fight a battle of attrition with Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's spirit power was infinite, so he naturally wouldn't be polite. Gongsun Qianjue had been killed by Chu Fengmian after the sword principle totem swordsmanship was completed. Only his body was devoured by Chu Fengmian. Boom! Gongsun Qianjue's blood was devoured by the divine tree. Suddenly, a wave of spirit power came out from Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian could sense that the godly tree had grown excited after devouring Gongsun Qianjue's essence blood. It was beginning to transform. Innate godly power? The divine tree is devouring the innate godly body's bloodline power. Chu Fengmian SSS innate divine bodies is innate godly power S body sif he S, he's Chu body, if he, he's, he, if he T, he S, he's also, if he be SSS him, SS is TT it TSS. It. T is. S of. The heaven's end divine body wasn't inferior. In the future, if the arts of 5 Chaos Emperors could gather all 5 divine bodies, he could form the most powerful and mysterious Chaos divine body. Of course, Chu Fengmian didn't care about the heaven's end divine body, so he let the divine tree devour it. He didn't expect the divine tree to be able to devour the innate godly power. Chu Fengmian could feel that the heaven's end divine body was being devoured by the divine tree, fusing into its numerous roots and covering Chu Fengmian's body. With the support of the heaven's end divine body, Chu Fengmian's body was more than tenacious. It was a pleasant surprise for Chu Fengmian. Of course, that wasn't all. Chu Fengmian's greatest gain was the hundreds of sword arts he'd comprehended from the Sword Dao Totem. They could be fused into the 9 realms sword arts. Fusing a single sword art would only increase Chu Fengmian's strength by a little, but fusing hundreds of sword arts would be enough to cause a qualitative change. Boom! Chu Fengmian didn't hold back. In his mind, the 9 realms ancient book condensed and fused the sword arts into it. Even the weakest of the ancient era's sword skills were Earth-class martial skills. Most of them were Heaven-class martial skills. After fusing with the 9 realms ancient book, the book suddenly became a few hundred pages thick. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's strength began to rise. His aura reached its peak. Boom! A large amount of spiritual energy burst out from Chu Fengmian's body and returned to his body. The dense spiritual energy caused Chu Fengmian's strength to rise. Breakthrough. Chu Fengmian slowly opened his eyes. His realm had broken through again, reaching the 6th step of the life and death steps, the heart-refining realm. Chu Fengmian only needed one more step to reach the heavenly fate realm and become an emperor. Great! If I didn't get these 2 Sword Dao totems, my realm wouldn't have advanced by leaps and bounds. I made the right choice to participate in the 9 realms genius battle. Chu Fengmian was overjoyed. The sword techniques recorded in the 2 totems were used to demonstrate Chu Fengmian's sword techniques in the 9 realms battle of geniuses. Now, he had finally broken through again. Now, I have a higher chance of winning against the Demon Emperor. Chu Fengmian looked at the Demon Emperor coldly. The only person who could compete with him for first place was the Demon Emperor. Chu Fengmian had never tasted defeat in his life. He had to win this battle. If he couldn't even defeat the Demon Emperor, how could he stand at the top of the 9 realms genius battle? Breakthrough? Chu Fengmian actually broke through at this time? It seems that he comprehended something in his battle with Gongsun Qianjue. Chu Fengmian will be even more difficult to deal with after his breakthrough. The spectators also noticed the change in Chu Fengmian's aura. Naturally, they could see that Chu Fengmian had broken through. In the 9 realms genius competition, the battles between the geniuses would often result in new insights. Therefore, those who participated in the 9 realms genius battle, as long as they could leave alive, would have their strength increase by leaps and bounds. Chu Fengmian's breakthrough wasn't unexpected. On the other hand, the Tianjian sect disciples looked at Chu Fengmian with no resentment. Chapter 985. So what? You deserve to die. Jian Zhanxian said coldly when he saw Chu Fengmian's breakthrough. His heart was full of confidence. Jian Zhanxian's name was immortal slaying. Even if he was an immortal, he would still slay him. Even if Chu Fengmian broke through again and became an emperor, he would still cut off his head with his sword. It wasn't just Jian Zhanxian. Huang Wu and the others looked at Chu Fengmian with the same feelings. So what if Chu Fengmian broke through again? Chu Fengmian's current performance was dazzling. When they trampled him under their feet, they could reach a higher level. There aren't many people left. Chu Fengmian swept his gaze across the field. Including Chu Fengmian, there were only 6 people left. Jian Zhanxian, MOD, Huang Wu, Yao Zhe, Xing Xianqing, and Mo Lietian. In addition to the recently deceased Gongsun Tianjue and Chu Fengmian, there were already 8 people in the top 8. These few faces were all familiar. They were almost all well-known figures of the younger generation. Other than the deceased Wu Hongtian and Gongsun Tianjue, all the geniuses of the 7 major sects had reached this stage. Outside of the 7 major sects, only Chu Fengmian and MOD had reached this stage. Chu Fengmian had already reached the top 4 ahead of the rest. As long as he won 2 more rounds, he would be able to become the champion of this year's 9 Regions Genius Battle. As expected, the champion can only be born from these people. Without Chu Fengmian and MOD, the champion of this year's 9 Regions Genius Battle would definitely belong to the 7 major sections. I didn't expect a dark horse to appear in this year's 9 Regions Genius Battle. The 9 Regions Genius Battle had entered its final stage. It was also the most exciting stage. Most of the remaining cultivators were already favored from the very beginning. For people like Sword Immortal and the others to be able to reach this step, it was not unexpected by anyone. The only true dark horse was Chu Fengmian. It could be said that before the 9 Regions Genius Battle began, most cultivators didn't even know of Chu Fengmian's existence. Even if they had heard of him, they had only heard of Chu Fengmian's arrogance in killing the disciples of the 7 great sects in the ruins of End. As for Chu Fengmian reaching this step and even entering the top 4 for the first time, there was absolutely no one who could have guessed that he was the biggest dark horse. Of course, other than Chu Fengmian, the fact that the Demon Emperor could kill Wu Hongtian was also beyond everyone's expectations. However, the Demon Emperor's reputation had already spread throughout the 9 regions, so Chu Fengmian was still slightly inferior to him. The next battle. The name of the ancient gladiator arena was changing. Yao Zhe versus Jian Zhanxian. When he saw these 2 names, Chu Fengmian couldn't help but look over. His gaze fell onto the arena. Yao Zhe, the young master of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Although the Valley of the Medicine Masters was known for its alchemy, it did not mean that they were not good at fighting. To be able to become one of the 7 major sects, if one did not have enough strength, how could it be possible? If the Medicine King's Valley did not have enough strength, it would have long been occupied by other sections. Just like the Heavenly Soldier family Su back then. To be able to become one of the 7 major sects, it had already proven the strength of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Therefore, no one dared to underestimate Yao Zhe. His poison skills were earth-shattering. And his opponent, Jian Zhanxian, was the young master of the Tianjian sect, who had inherited the name of the Celestial Slayer. This battle was worth looking forward to. Among the 7 major sects, there were also countless competitions. There was almost no exchange of words. The 2 of them fought in the air. Boom! 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 The spiritual energy in the air exploded wildly. Neither of them had any intention of probing each other. From the beginning, Jian Zhanxian unsheathed his spiritual sword and slashed towards Yao Zhe. As for Yao Zhe, he did not hold back in the slightest. Poison mist began to condense around him. The poisonous fog was colorful and there were hundreds of different colors floating around it. Each of the colors represented a terrifying poison. These poisons would not harm Yao Zhe, but Jian Zhanxian would be in danger if he came into contact with them. It could be said that from the beginning, both of them had used all their strength. In a battle of this level, if one did not use all his strength, it was almost impossible to defeat the opponent. If it were a slightly weaker warrior facing such an attack, he would have been defeated within a few moves. But Jian Zhanxian and Yao Zhe were fighting fiercely. Almost no one retreated. It was very intense. Faced with the poisonous fog, Jian Zhanxian held the tip of his sword and broke it with one strike. So strong. Both of them are so strong. Looking at the battle in the arena, the warriors and the spectators' stands all let out sounds of admiration. Both of them were very strong. Both of them were qualified to compete for the top spot in this year's 9 Regions Genius Battle. It was possible for anyone to emerge victorious in this battle. 10,000 strikes in one strike. It seems that Jian Zhanxian is still hiding his strength. Chu Fengmian saw Jian Zhanxian's swordsmanship. Although Jian Zhanxian seemed to have used all his strength, in fact, Jian Zhanxian was still hiding his strength. At least, he was hiding his sword principle. 10,000 strikes in one strike was indeed a level that countless sword cultivators could not reach even in their dreams. But this level was still too low for Jian Zhanxian. His true sword principle was definitely beyond this level. It seemed that Jian Zhanxian was determined to win the top spot. That was why he hid his swordsmanship. Poison King descends. While Chu Fengmian was observing and thinking, the arena had changed. Yao Zhe could not bear it anymore. He took the lead and used his killing move. Obviously, he could see that Jian Zhanxian's strength was still in his hands. It would not do him any good to delay. So now, he had to stake everything on this one throw. Countless toxins were shot out from Yao Zhe's side. They turned into the Poison King in the air and attacked Jian Zhanxian. As long as one touched the King of Poison, one would be poisoned to death on the spot. Even Ancestor Wu was no exception. In the face of Yao Zhe's attack, Jian Zhanxian was as calm as ever. He just condensed his sword essence and waved his sword. The dazzling sword light rushed to the sky. Yao Zhe's attack, the Poison King, was destroyed in an instant. He showed his invincibility in an understatement. What a powerful sword! Jian Zhanxian's strength is more than twice as strong as before. Jian Zhanxian is still the strongest person in the 7 sects. Yao Zhe's attack just now was extremely terrifying. Chapter 986. Jian Zhanxian and Yao Zhe were already at the pinnacle of the younger generation of the 9 domains. Warriors who could reach this stage were no weaklings. However, the gap between the two of them was still huge. Yao Zhe knew that he would definitely lose after this move failed. He chose to admit defeat and fell off the stage. The 7 major sects were still an alliance after all. Hence, they would not kill each other after determining the winner. Jian Zhanxian also followed Chu Fengmian into the top 4. After Jian Zhanxian stepped off the stage, he deliberately glanced at Chu Fengmian. His eyes were full of provocation. It was full of provocation and killing intent. It was as if he was saying that he would definitely kill Chu Fengmian the next time he met him. It seems that the sword immoral slaying sword is not as calm as it seems on the surface. Chu Fengmian sneered. Jian Zhanxian's appearance to the outside world was that of a calm person. It was as if nothing could shake his heart. He was neither surprised nor happy. This kind of mentality was the most terrifying person. However, it seemed that Jian Zhanxian's state of mind was far from reaching this level. He took the initiative to provoke Chu Fengmian. It was also a show of eagerness to kill Chu Fengmian. Jian Zhanxian's sword intent should have reached the stage of infinite changes. In addition to his realm, there was almost no difference between him and some great ancestors. Chu Fengmian observed Jian Zhanxian. Although Jian Zhanxian had not shown his full strength yet, Chu Fengmian faintly guessed Jian Zhanxian's strength. Jian Zhanxian's strength was close to that of great ancestors, or even comparable to great ancestors. This somewhat exceeded Chu Fengmian's expectations. It seemed that Chu Fengmian had underestimated the geniuses of the 9 domains. Usually, the first place of the 9 domains genius tournament would be geniuses with the strength of Hell Demon Lord and Wu Hongtian. However, this tournament was different. The 7 major sects had given out such terrifying rewards, attracting people like Jian Zhanxian. If I had not obtained the Sword Dao Totem and comprehended my strength, I might not be Jian Zhanxian's opponent. Chu Fengmian thought to herself. With his previous strength, he was at most able to contend against utmost heaven experts. If Chu Fengmian were to face Ancestor Wu, who was in the immortal realm, he would have no chance of winning. However, Chu Fengmian had obtained the Sword Principle Totem. He had comprehended countless sword principles and integrated them into the 9 regions sword principle. This allowed Chu Fengmian's strength to improve further. This time, Chu Fengmian would not retreat even if he was facing old Ancestor Wu. While Chu Fengmian was pondering, the next battle had already begun. The 2 people in this battle were respectively Huang Wu and Xing Xianqing. It was also a battle between the 7 great sections. Huang Wu could be said to be one of the geniuses of the 7 sects, second only to Jian Zhanxian. Generally speaking, Jian Zhanxian would be the number 1 person among the younger generation of the 7 major sects. If there was anyone who could contend against Jian Zhanxian, it would be Desolation. Huang Wu's strength was no less powerful than Jian Zhanxian's. His opponent, Xing Xianqing, surprised Chu Fengmian. Xing Xianqing was the only female in the top 8. In the 9 regions, powerful female geniuses were extremely rare, let alone those who could stand at the top of the 9 regions. Xing Xianqing was a disciple of Dubhe Hall. Her cultivation technique was extremely strange. However, in terms of strength, Desolation still had a slight advantage. Desolation had already reached the 8th step of the life and death steps, the ultimate realm, while Xing Xianqing was at the 7th step of the life and death steps, the destiny realm. In a battle between geniuses of this level, it was almost possible to defeat an opponent who was in a higher realm. Apart from Chu Fengmian and the Demon Emperor, no one else in this year's 9 regions genius battle could reach this step. Xianqing, I didn't expect you to reach this step. If it wasn't for the fact that I have to get the first place, I would have let you win this time. Desolation looked at Xing Xianqing with a somewhat infatuated look. Xing Xianqing was known as the number 1 beauty of the 9 regions. It was rumored that many geniuses of the 7 sects were pursuing her. It seemed that Desolation was one of them. There's no need for you to let me win. Whoever wins or loses will depend on their own abilities. Xing Xianqing said coldly with an expressionless face. As soon as she spoke, she moved and pointed a finger at the sky. Before the crowd could understand Xing Xuanqing's action, the stars in the sky suddenly fell. One after another, these stars appeared out of thin air and descended upon desolate void. Is this Dubhe Hall's cultivation technique, the way of stars? It's really not strange. Even some of the sovereigns couldn't see through Xing Xuanqing's attack. Dubhe Hall had always been known for its mysteriousness. Ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to understand the techniques of Dubhe Hall's disciples. However, Desolation seemed to be at ease. Clearly, this wasn't his first time fighting with a disciple of Dubhe Hall. The geniuses of the 7 sects often fought with each other, so he wasn't unfamiliar with Xing Xuanqing's techniques. A surge of spiritual energy suddenly condensed under Desolation's feet and turned into an ancient path. The desolate ancient path. Desolation's desolate ancient path was condensed by the other desolate ancient sect's disciples that Chu Fengmian had seen. It was many times thicker and connected to the depths of the void. It was unfathomable. It seemed to run all the way to the desolate ancient era. The stars in the sky fell on Desolation's body. As the desolate ancient path condensed a surge of spiritual energy under Desolation's feet, they were instantly shattered. None of them could fall on Desolation's body. Absolute defense. The desolate ancient path condensed by desolation was definitely worthy of this title. Qianqing, you'd better admit defeat. With your cultivation level, it's impossible for you to break my desolate ancient path. Desolation looked at Qianqing and said with a laugh. His desolate ancient path could even block a cultivator of the same cultivation level for a period of time. Even if some supreme great ancestors were to come, they would still be able to resist for a while. Moreover, Xing Xuanqing's cultivation level was one level lower than his. It was even more impossible for her to break his desolate ancient path. Hearing Desolation's words, a trace of anger flashed across Xing Xuanqing's eyebrows. She slowly raised her hand. Suddenly, countless rainbow-colored lights shone in front of her. As Xing Qianqing pointed her finger, the rainbow-colored lights condensed into a long spear and pierced toward Desolation. The appearance of the rainbow-colored lights surprised Desolation. It was as if he had never seen it before. Desolation activated the power of his desolate ancient path to block it. The two forces collided with a loud boom. Chapter 987. In the arena. As Xing Xuanqing's spear pierced forward, a crack appeared on Desolate Void's desolate great path. Many of the martial artists in the spectators' stands were stunned when they saw this scene. Even Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. He didn't expect Xing Qianqing to have such strength. She was able to surpass a level and break through the desolate great path. Desolate Void's eyes revealed a hint of seriousness. He had thought that Desolate Void was invincible with the desolate great path. He didn't expect Xing Qianqing to have hidden such strength. It was beyond his expectations. It seems that I can't underestimate you, Desolate Void said softly. Huang Wu said softly. Spiritual energy suddenly gushed out from his body. The spiritual energy instantly restored the desolate great path under his feet. At the same time, with the restoration of the desolate great path, his strength was now several times stronger than before. What? Desolate Void was still hiding his strength? This is Desolate Void's true strength? Desolate Void's current strength and appearance didn't seem like a human at all. Everyone was shocked. No one expected Desolate Void to have hidden such strength. Previously, Huang Wu's strength was no different from an ordinary utmost celestial expert. Now, his strength had increased by several times. Qianqing, you deserve my full strength. You will lose this battle. Desolate Void looked at Xing Qianqing and said coldly. All of a sudden, his body moved. His speed was extremely fast as he charged towards Xing Qianqing in the blink of an eye. Xing Qianqing pointed a finger. The seven-colored light in front of her turned into countless spears and pierced toward Desolate Void. Facing the attack of the seven-colored spears, Desolation snorted coldly and punched out, shattering all of the spears. Desolate Void's speed was extremely fast. In almost an instant, he was in front of Xing Qianqing. His fist fell mercilessly. Boom! The spiritual energy gathered in front of Xing Qianqing was shattered by the punch. She was forced back and spat out a mouthful of blood. It took a long time for her to recover. However, Desolate Void didn't plan to attack again. If he attacked again, Xing Qianqing would die. They were both geniuses of the seven sections. Naturally, they wouldn't kill each other. I admit defeat. Xing Qianqing took a deep breath and took the initiative to admit defeat. She also understood that she had lost this battle. Xing Xuanqing's cultivation level was still too low. If she was at the same cultivation level as Huang Wu, it would be hard to say who would win this battle. However, a loss was a loss. There was no reason for it. After admitting defeat, Xing Xuanqing's body moved and directly descended from the stage. Huang Wu's expression was relaxed as he left the arena as well. Chu Fengmian, Jian Zhanxian, Huang Wu. 3 of the top 4 spots had already been decided. The last group of the top 8 had been decided. Devil Emperor against Mo Lai Tian. It was a duel between 2 geniuses of 9 Demon City. Following that, the names of the Demon Emperor and Mo Lai Tian appeared in the Ancient Era's arena. The two of them stepped into it without any hesitation and looked at each other from a distance. Mo Skysplitter, long time no see. In the arena, the Demon Emperor stood in the air and looked at Mo Lai Tian with a calm face. There was even a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. The two of them were naturally very familiar with each other. The Demon Emperor was once a disciple of Nine Demon City. After the Demon Emperor left Nine Demon City, the two of them parted ways. Now, the 6 Demon Gates in Nine Demon City were mortal enemies. After all, without the 6 Demon Gates, Nine Demon City wouldn't have declined to such a state. When enemies meet, their eyes turn red. Demon Emperor, I will kill you and destroy the 6 Demon Gates. The Nine Demon City is the only Nine Demon City. Mo Lai Tian looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. His eyes were filled with dense killing intent. Is that so? Kill me? Mo Lai Tian, my current strength isn't something you can imagine. Do you still think that you can defeat me? The Demon Emperor looked at Mo Lai Tian and laughed. Don't be arrogant. Mo Lai Tian roared angrily when he heard the Demon Emperor's words. All of a sudden, Mo Lai Tian attacked, sending a palm strike at the Demon Emperor. Heaven and Earth Splitter. All of a sudden, Mo Lai Tian made his move and attacked the Devil Emperor. He had pushed his strength to the limit. From the beginning, Mo Lai Tian didn't have any intention of holding back. His first attack was an absolute killing move. A terrifying devil will burst out from Mo Lai Tian's body and condensed in his palm. He had been prepared for this for a long time. From the beginning, he blasted out this killing move. The demonic intent that filled the sky bombarded the Demon Emperor. Just an insignificant demonic path. Let me show you the true demonic path. The Demon Emperor took a step forward, and the demonic will that was approaching the Demon Emperor suddenly dissipated. The demonic intent didn't even dare to approach the Demon Emperor's body. It was as if the Demon Emperor was a monarch of the demonic path. 10 directions. In the sky, 10 pitch-black figures suddenly appeared. These 10 pitch-black figures were different from each other. Each of them was a terrifying demon god with a malevolent face. 10 heavenly demons? Seeing the 10 pitch-black figures, Mo Lai Tian's face was filled with disbelief. His expression was extremely ugly. The 10 heavenly demons were rumored to be the 10 most terrifying demon gods of the demonic path. Now, they were actually summoned by the Demon Emperor. Die! The 10 heavenly demons attacked at the same time, bombarding Mo Lai Tian. Boom! The two forces collided. The power of Mo Lai Tian's punch was scattered on the spot. Mo Lai Tian's body was sent flying several hundred miles away before slowly coming to a stop. In just one move, the outcome of this battle was decided. Mo Lai Tian spat out a mouthful of blood. He was on the verge of death. With such strength, facing Mo Lai Tian, it was simply a one-sided battle. Strong, too strong. Is this the Demon Emperor's true strength? Mo Lai Tian, a Paramount Realm expert, couldn't even take a single move from him. With such strength, could the Demon Emperor be as strong as old ancestor Wu? But he's only in the heart-refining realm. How can he have such terrifying strength? Is the 6 Paths Demon Gate really going to rise? Originally, everyone had guessed that this battle wouldn't be exciting. In the battle between the two geniuses of the Nine Demon City, although the Demon Emperor was famous, he was on par with Mo Lai Tian. Chapter 988. Too strong. On the other side of the phone. Absolute strength. Aside from this, no other words could describe the current Demon Emperor. Along the way, any enemy that the Demon Emperor encountered were all killed by him in a crushing manner. Wu Hongtian couldn't stop the Demon Emperor. Even the current Mo Lai Tian couldn't stop the Demon Emperor. Jian Zhanxian and Desolate Wushuang couldn't help but reveal a serious expression when they saw the Demon Emperor's current strength. Even if the two of them encountered the Demon Emperor now, it wouldn't be difficult for them to defeat him. Emolitian, I'll give you a chance. Leave 9 Demon City and join my 6 Demon Gates. I'll give you the position of 6 Demon Gates Sovereign. The Demon Emperor looked at Emolitian and suddenly said. His words shocked all the martial artists present. They didn't expect that the Demon Emperor would choose to recruit Emolitian at this time. Most of the experts in the 6 Paths Demon Gates were recruited by the Demon Emperor from the 9 Demon City. Now, the Demon Emperor also wanted to recruit the number 1 expert of 9 Demon City, Emolitian. Demon Emperor. Demon Emperor, don't go too far. The experts of 9 Demon City roared in anger when they heard the Demon Emperor's words. The Demon Emperor had already roped in many talented cultivators from the 9 Demon City. If the Demon Emperor recruited Emolitian again, it would be a disaster for 9 Demon City. Several old ancestors of 9 Demon City wanted to take a step forward and enter the arena. However, the merciless lightning from the ancient gladiator arena had suddenly descended upon them, forcing them to back off. No one could get close to the ancient gladiator arena. No one could interfere with the battle in the arena. Emolitian, what do you say? The Demon Emperor looked at Emolitian and sneered. This is your only choice. If you don't agree, you'll die. No one could interfere with the battle in the arena. If Emolitian wanted to admit defeat, the Demon Emperor would kill him in the time it took him to say 3 words. That was why the Demon Emperor was so confident in his victory. Dream on. Emolitian said without hesitation. With his dignity, how could he choose to submit to the Demon Emperor? Then you're courting death? Very well, I shall fulfill your wish. Hearing Emolitian's words, Demon Emperor's eyes flashed with anger. He was the Demon Emperor. Anyone who dared to resist him had to die. 10 directions. The 10 heavenly demons beside the Demon Sovereign moved once again. The power of the 10 heavenly demons suddenly merged into one and blasted towards Emolitian. This spiritual energy bombardment was aimed at killing Emolitian on the spot without any mercy. Boom! The terrifying power swept out in all directions. No one could resist the terror of this power. The strength of the Demon Emperor has reached an unbelievable level. Not to mention the younger generation of warriors, even some supreme ancestors may not be his match. Looking at the power of the Demon Emperor, some old ancestors frowned. If they were to receive such power, it would be extremely troublesome. If they were the slightest bit careless, they would be consigned to eternal damnation. As for Emolitian, he was already seriously injured. If he were to endure such power, he would undoubtedly die. While the crowd was discussing, a figure suddenly flew out from the center of the explosion. Heaven-splitting devil? He's not dead? Everyone looked at Emolitian, who had just flown out. They were all surprised. But soon, they saw that on Emolitian's chest, there were countless cracks on the jade talisman. It was broken. A protective jade talisman. It's a protective jade talisman personally refined by a supreme ancestor. I didn't expect Emolitian to have such a thing. When they saw the jade talisman, they understood a lot. A protective jade talisman was a spiritual artifact that some powerful warriors could make. By injecting their blood essence into it, it could help other warriors resist attacks. For example, the protective jade talisman in Emolitian's hand was a treasure that a supreme ancestor used his blood essence to make. It was extremely precious. Emolitian relied on the protective jade talisman to escape this calamity. Oh? Seeing that Emolitian was still alive, Demon Emperor's eyes were filled with surprise. He had underestimated Emolitian. Since Emolitian chose to fight with him, he must have prepared a way out. When the Devil Emperor gathered his spirit energy once more, wanting to kill Emolitian again, Emolitian took the initiative to admit defeat and left the stage. In this way, even Demon Emperor wouldn't be able to kill him. He managed to keep his life. Chu Fengmian looked at the scene and said with a smile. After blocking the Demon Emperor's attack, the protective jade amulet no longer had any power left. If Demon Emperor had realized it and attacked again, Mo Lai Tian would have died without a doubt. Demon Emperor's arrogance had given Mo Lai Tian a chance to escape. Seeing that Mo Lai Tian had safely walked down the stage, the expressions of the 9 demon cities' supreme ancestors finally relaxed a little. If Mo Lai Tian died, it would have been a great loss to their 9 demon city. Demon Emperor, you didn't kill me today, but I'll kill you one day. Mo Lai Tian got off the stage and roared at the Devil Emperor. Hearing Mo Lai Tian's words, Demon Emperor's eyes were filled with disdain. It was as if he had never seen Mo Lai Tian as an opponent. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked at Chu Fengmian. It was as if this meant that Chu Fengmian was the true opponent that he took seriously. The 9 regions' geniuses. Even Jian Zhanxian and Huang Wu weren't in Demon Emperor's eyes. His only opponent was Chu Fengmian. Humph. When Sword Immortal and Desolation saw the look in Demon Emperor's eyes, their faces revealed a hint of anger. Both of them were famous geniuses in the 9 regions, but Demon Emperor didn't put them in his eyes. If they met Demon Emperor, they would have taught him a lesson. Mo Lai Tian took the initiative to admit defeat. The Demon Emperor also obtained the last spot and entered the top 4. Without any rest, the next battle was about to begin. Next battle, Demon Emperor against Huang Wu. Demon Emperor's name appeared on the stage of the ancient gladiator arena. His opponent was Huang Wu. Huang Wu had defeated Xing Xianqing with overwhelming force. Seeing the groups, Jian Zhanxian looked at Chu Fengmian. The first battle was between Huang Wu and Demon Emperor. The next battle was between Chu Fengmian and Jian Zhanxian. Chu Fengmian and Jian Zhanxian were finally going to fight. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.